Okay, there we go. So, all right. So for today, I go in here. I'm gonna go into workshop 2, and so again, geojason.io. We use there today. We'll maybe use that just briefly today. QGIS. If you haven't downloaded the QGIS app, so we don't this morning like last week. We'll do a little bit. We're going to use actually QGIS this afternoon. Go ahead and download it. It's good to have a local copy of it anyway. But the QGIS website, and if you want to get 3.14 for your local install, you can, or you can download the other versions. Feel free to go do that. OpenStreetMap. If you have not made an account on OpenStreetMap, I need to have you go do that now. And you can go over to the link. Again, I'll drop this in the chat too in case you couldn't get to it. There we go. Do go make an account real quick because you're going to need an account in order to do the editing that we're going to do here shortly. And then the data, I already gave you that address. So anybody else needs it again, just ask in the chat and someone can copy and paste it back there for you. This is the zip directory of everything we used previously and some new things for today. And that same thing is available in the GitHub account that was previously posted. So this morning we'll do an introduction to OpenStreetMap. Then we're going to talk about how do you import OSM data into QGIS. Again, you can follow along with me if you have QGIS installed this morning, but you wouldn't have to because it's going to be fairly brief. It's more just a demonstration of how to do that because it's pretty simple. And then we're going to spend the rest of the morning actually doing some OSM editing. So we're going to use the Learn OSM Task Manager site for this. I got my fingers crossed everything works well on that because I've never hosted one. I've only participated in those in the past, and you actually have to have people in order to know if it works. So we'll go through that. At the very least, we can always do OSM editing on your own too. We'll take a break, and then this afternoon, I'll talk a bit more about some of the GIS help documents out there for us. We're gonna do some importing of data, different types of data, working with aerial imagery real briefly. Spend most of the afternoon looking at geoprocessing, and that's an unscripted talk. So we can kind of just go through some different things and see what happens, and a chance for you to explore some of the geoprocessing and see what happens as you make things there. That's the best way to learn geoprocessing, I think. Then we're going to talk briefly about map layout in QGIS because we could spend a couple hours on learning how to use map layout. And the reason I'm kind of skipping over that a little bit is because for the most part, when you guys make maps, we can just do an export of the map for the purpose of DSPG. Or we're just exporting out the data to go back and use in R. And I'll show you briefly a leaflet plugin that's available for QGIS. And we'll talk about leaflet a little bit and what it is and why you might want to use leaflet. It also works in R. And then the end of the day, we'll have just a brief QGIS lab period for anybody that's got questions or needs some help looking at something. Okay, so that's our agenda for today. So OpenStreetMap. Has anybody used OpenStreetMap in the past, as far as you know? I'm gonna get my view here on my other screen so I can see some of you. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you think you use OpenStreetMap regularly, or if you've edited or done anything in OpenStreetMap. Any hands coming up? Too many. Okay. All right. So not seeing much of a response for doing that. Well, I tell you what, you've probably used OpenStreetMap quite a bit. If you've looked at maps that are non-Google Maps and they're not Microsoft Bing, there's a good chance that the part of the base data layer that's being used is OpenStreetMap. And even if you see stuff that comes out of CloudMade or Mapbox, chances are they are just pulling in OpenStreetMap underneath their data wrapper that they have on things. So let me quit Slack so it quits making noise. All right, so OpenStreetMap was created by Steve Coast back around 2004. He was inspired by what was going on with Wikimapia and Wikipedia at the time. And he was very frustrated. While in the United States, we had the US GIS data available, and it was available to us at that time too. They have there the UK ordinance. The UK ordinance survey, and that was the British's version of, I guess, US GIS and other stuff, but it was not readily available to the public to use in our mapping applications. And so he's fairly frustrated by this and went about going and developing this OpenStreetMap platform. Now it's a form of facilitated, or it's a form of volunteer geographic information is what you'll find it listed under, or crowdsourcing or citizen science data, because the public is contributing to building it. I refer to it as being a facilitated volunteer geographic information. And that's my word for this type of stuff, because in true VGI, if you were just to go about, let's say, wanting to start making a map of features in your county that no one else has mapped, and you just used whatever tools you had, and then you published it, you made it available for other people to use, that's volunteer geographic information. Once it gets added to a, once it gets added into a system of some type, or there's a form that helps us get that loaded in, then it becomes facilitated, because they are kind of limiting what type of data you can enter into it. The format you have to put that data into it is all managed by the system. So that's facilitated VGI. So OpenStreetMap license, I kind of copied and pasted that into here for you to see. But it does, for the most part, free. I mean, there's access charges in terms of your internet and stuff like that. But OpenStreetMap's map images can be used as underlying map data for free. You do need to make sure you include reference back to the OpenStreetMap Foundation when you're using it. If you distribute it or add to it or build upon the system, that legal agreement transfers with it. And that's just because of the way that the Creative Commons attribution and the other license agreement that they have is set up. But make sure when you use this type of stuff for open source data, always look at their license that's required in their software. Hold on just one second. I got to move one light here. There you go. A little bit better lighting as I work here. All right, so we want to look at creating geometry in QGIS now from OpenStreetMap. And so let me go ahead and show you the demo here. If you want to fire up QGIS, you sure can. I'll bring my QGIS over here. And so what we're going to start out with is we're going to make a new document. So I have a brand new QGIS interface, and I like to make a new document. In this case, I think I'm going to bring in my Iowa County. I made another set of county data. And here I have Iowa County Mercator, UTM 15. It's the same data, but in different projections. I just made a couple ahead of time so I could work with them a little bit easier. But I'm going to bring in this Iowa County. Okay. And remember, your color of your map may be different than mine. It's the random color that's assigned. And once we have brought that in, now this is in UTM. I want to add a raster graphic to this map so you can see an area we're going to work with. We'll work with Ogden, Iowa for the moment in this one. And so in here, I've got a folder called raster. If I expand it, you'll see that I have this NAPE 2019 NC TIFF. I probably could name these better, but that was the name given to it when I downloaded it. This is from a federal flight that was done in 2019 in the fall, and NC on this one means it's natural color, as opposed to other formats that they've saved their files in. This is a TIFF. and it's a geocoded TIFF, so it's got the coordinates built into it. You can also bring it in as a JPEG. There's a corresponding file that goes with the JPEG that has the coordinates in it. It's just a text file. And then they also have a JPEG2, which is a JP2 file. And here JP2 files come with a shape as well as a raster. But the cleanest the cleanest one to work with, I think, is the TIFF, even though it might not be the most compressed. Let me bring it down. You see a little dot in the middle of my screen there. Just remember, sometimes if things come in accidentally below your county map, you can't see it because it's below the layers in the stack. So make sure you have it on the stack right. You got two options for zooming in. You can use the zoom tools on top, or you can right click on it and do it really fast, but right click it out the zoom to layer. So it zooms into Ogden, Iowa. And the area I'm going to be interested in is the high school and the playing fields actually down here. I'll talk about where this image came from in just a moment. Or actually, I think I'll save that till this afternoon when I bring in images. But I did bring it in off a website that's hosted at Iowa State. Okay, so there's the image that we have. And I want to see the OpenStreetMap data that's available for this location. And there's two different plugins that you can turn on in, well, actually, before I go there, Kent, you had a question, how do you import the folder into the local QGIS? Okay, so Kent, were you able to download the data directory or the data file I posted, the zip file? Once you've downloaded that zip file and unzip it, you can just browse to it and you can add it as a favorite and get to it that way. So let me know if you can't get there. Okay, good, great. Okay, so by the way, you can also, you don't have to use the browser in QGIS to get the files. If you have your files like I do right here, you can just drag and drop files from I'm on a Mac now, but you can drag and drop files from your local system browser and put them onto your map. Okay, anyway, back to where I was. So we have this file here. There's two different ways to bring in OpenStreetMap data, or there's two different tools, I guess you could consider inside of QGIS. We can also do this outside of QGIS, which we'll do in a moment as well. But you have to go turn on your plugins to do this. So for your plugins, go to the plugins menu, manage and install plugins. Everybody should see my plugins directory. And I'm just going to type in OSM to do a search. And the two of them, I'm going to have you turn on two of them. One's OSM Downloader, which is my preferred one to use. And it's got to change. The only thing that concerned me about this is its changelog really stopped back in 2015. So I was a little bit hesitant to use this one, but it works. And actually it seems to work quite well at the moment. The other one is to use the Quick OSM. It's a little bit more robust, but I just like OSM Downloader better, but do turn them both on, okay? And there could be other ones that you can try and use if you're interested. Quick Map Services does some cool things too. So once you've got those checked, hit close, and it should add a toolbar. Mine happened to go right on the left right here, my kind of circling them. Okay, it should add, actually there's two toolbars. You can move them around. So I can move this one up to here if I wanted. I might keep them both right here at the moment. The other thing that it added for you is under your vector menu, there's a Quick OSM menu that's been added, and you could use them, access them, or two of them could be accessed from there as well. But I'll look, you guys don't have to do this next step. You can just watch here for a moment. But the Quick OSM launches an interface like this, and you can search for keywords, download stuff. You can write queries if you know how to write queries in OSM language. You can do the query here. And there's a lot of other things you can do. So once you become a little more of a power user, working with OpenStreetMap and the syntax for writing queries, this system works really well, and you can filter out the data and get what you want. But for what we're doing today, I just need to use this simple download OSM by drawing a rectangle on the map. It's hard to get easier than that. So I'm gonna click my download OSM button. I'm just gonna go draw a box around the school here. And when you get a lot of clients that have it like this, even if you're writing, I imagine I haven't done this in R, but imagine some of the tools in R, if you're doing this, you're still gonna have to just provide it the north, south, east, and west boundary files. So you can see east and west, I have to put in the longitudes, and north, south, I have to put the latitudes in. So it can draw a box, okay? If you give it those 4 coordinates, it can draw a box. You do have to tell it where you want to save your downloaded file. So I'm gonna save location, let's see. Pops a spot here for me to save it. And I've already saved it once, but I'm gonna do it again here. Just gonna go put it in my downloads. It makes a file that's a .osm file, okay? Now, one trick with this tool I found out is that if I just download it and I don't load the layer after I download it, and then I try to just drag and drop it over, it displays slightly different, and I think that there's a less separation of the layering that works. And I'll show you that in a moment, but I want to make sure if you do this, do check load layer after download. It comes in different, and it comes in a way that I like working with it. So load layer after download has to be checked. We're gonna hit OK. It's gonna go grab all this data for me right now, and boom, there it is. So one of the key differences is that when it brings it in this way, and one of the reasons I chose Ogden is because some of the people on Ogden that have been doing the developing, as a former graduate of the school there, he's been getting all the data layers in for land cover, as well as you see a lot of buildings have been coded and drawn in, okay? The trails, the fence, the sidewalks are all in. There was an addition put on the buildings this last year. Some of the aerials don't have. We found other ones, and we drew that in, have that correct, okay? The playing fields are in the correct locations and stuff. So that's what makes this one kind of a neat one to bring in. On the left side of the screen, or let me zoom out once just a little so you can see what happened. So I brought in my data. I'm gonna turn off the Iowa county underneath here. Make this a little cleaner. Okay, so here's the area that brought in. The reason I brought some polygons in outside of the area I was working is just because those polygons extended beyond my view area. So when it brought these layers in, there's a lot of layers of data that were brought in. And I'm gonna uncheck a few of them. Like here's OSM lines. What I'm interested in getting actually right now, so you guys know, is I'm after these ball fields. I wanna export out just these ball fields. But you need to find out what layers this information's on. So it's not gonna be an OSM lines. Turn those off. Multi-string, nope, it's not there. All right, if we look at OSM multi-polygons, oh, it's gonna be in that set, okay? Now there's a couple different zooms that we have in here. I'm gonna turn off the protected. Zoom 3, it's not in that one. Zoom 2, not there. It's gotta be inside zoom 1. And if I look at this, there's building, artificial, natural, and sport. I don't know why they call them zoom, but they do. And I really don't care because I'm just trying to get to the data that's been drawn. So I can uncheck building. See, building would have gotten me each of these little buildings if I wanted those. Just a nice data layer to get if you need a project like that. Inside of sport, I can expand sport. They have track, stadium, and pitch. Well, I don't, there goes the track. Stadium, we'll get rid of the stadium, and pitch. I'm gonna get all 4 of these right here because of the football field. And so if I hit info on any one of these, oops, come in the right layer, make sure you're on the. So I hit info on that. Again, to do that, you had to make sure you highlighted the layer that was turned on. Over on the right, I can see some information about this that's been coded into OpenStreetMap. And again, they refer to that field as being an American football field. It should be a baseball, baseball, baseball. Technically, one of those is a softball field, so I probably need to go and fix that. Here we have practice fields for soccer of different ages and stuff, okay? So those fields have all been put in there. What I'm interested in doing is I want to select these 3 softball, baseball fields. So I can go to my select tool, which is a little bit tricky to do because I have the screen sharing Zoom page there. So now I got it. So I'm going to select all 3 of these, shift key down as I select. Otherwise, if you don't have the shift key down, you just get one at a time. So shift keys down. I'm going to select those 3. And then I can do stuff directly with them right here as they are loaded in. But my preference is to take stuff from OpenStreetMap, extract it out into its new shapefile, and then do work with it. So let me close this window. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to right click on OSM polygons. I'm going to tell it I want to export. And I want to export the selected features as. And here's my dialog that pops up. And go and save these. I'll put them in my Boone County. I already have a Ogden pitch file in here, but I'll just replace it. Save. Replace. All right, now here for the CRS is the projection system. I want to match my UTM zone 15 that I have in the current map of Iowa. If you didn't have that, you might have to search for UTM zone 15 and you can do that through that button. Everything else in here, automatic. We'll make this be polygons. Add the saved file to the map. That looks good. So we'll hit OK. Yes. Okay, so it's overwritten the file. So if I turn off now my OSM polygons, and these are color here, but let's go ahead and make these gradient blue. Okay, so those are my 3 diamonds. Okay, let me just check my chat window if anybody's got any questions. Okay, so now that I have those 3 items in here, I can look at their attributes. Pulls this on my other window, so I'll bring it over. So here's the attributes. You can see there were not a lot of attributes that were entered in for those items, because it's not an arrowway and it's not some other things here, but there's lots of fields in OpenStreetMap to describe different entities. So that's just one of the things you end up having to work with. But now that I have this Ogden pitch data layer that I've downloaded out of OpenStreetMap, I've extracted it and made it into my own shapefile. I want to try doing a buffer on it. So I'm just going to go up to my menu for vector. And if you go through down to geoprocessing tools, you can click buffer. And on what day was last week? Thursday when we met, we tried to do a buffer and it kept telling me everything was in degrees. That was because the stuff, all the data wells bringing in are all in WGS. They're actually in Earth coordinate system, latitude, longitude, everything was organized that way. It was they were unprojected data. This is now projected data. Once it's projected, I get more normalized units, such as meters, feet, miles, and yards. I'm interested in seeing how many, if I kind of had a rule that I want to know if youth in the area could actually walk to these ball diamonds. okay? I'm going to say that I want to know how far people can go within 1 mile. Okay, and that's as the crow flies. I'm not using Cartesian coordinates in this walking distance. I'm just as the crow flies, a 1 mile buffer distance away from these 3 ball diamonds. And the other thing I want to make sure I do is down here, something says dissolve the result. Right now, it would do 3 different buffers on each one. Okay, that'd be fine. But to make it look nicer, once it makes those 3 individual buffers, I want it to dissolve the shape into just 1 buffer. So we'll dissolve our result. It's gonna be a temporary. Let's hit run. Boy, that's huge. Let's see. There we go. Within 1 mile distance, pretty much covers the entire town. So no worries. We can go here and we can make it so we can see this a little bit better. We'll put a hatch on it. Okay. So you can see that whole area would be covered. So everybody is within 1 mile walking distance to these ball fields, even out here in the country. All right. So that's one way of using OpenStreetMap data and bringing that in. Does anybody have any questions at this point before we jump into 2 other things and then do our editing? Okay, so let me show you what would have happened if I would have taken, and here I have my OSM file I just downloaded. If I took it and I dragged it and I put it over here. Oh, sorry, let me do this first. Okay, so all my other OSM data is off and I want to right click, I'm going to tell it to remove those layers. Okay, so now to demonstrate this properly, I'm just going to drag and drop this downloaded OSM layer. And when you do this, it gives you a dialog such as this, and you can pick and choose which of these layers you want to bring in. But even if I bring all of these in, they don't come in with some of the color attributes that they would have had when I downloaded them the other way. And I don't have the submenus to break up. It tends to group these all together. So my multi-polygons are still in here. And I'd have to come in here and zoom and go through a couple of different data layers to find those softball, baseball, diamonds. They're part of this set, but there's layers over top each other. So that's why I don't like doing a direct download and then have to copy and paste it over into the QGIS. I prefer to download it and have it draw right to screen right away. Okay, again, that's simple. There's other slightly more complex ways of bringing data in where you have more refinement on it, but this was the easiest and quickest was to use this tool right here to download OSM and have it added directly to the map. Okay, so let's jump over here. There's another way we can bring in data, and that's to go directly to openstreetmap.org. So everybody can do this with me here. You're going to go to openstreetmap.org. Again, that's in the chat for you. And again, you also probably noticed when I download the other data, I didn't have to log in to do that, which is really nice. It just went and got the data. So you didn't have to be a user of or a registered user of OpenStreetMap. Go ahead and do this. Why don't you go ahead and zoom into any part of the map that you're interested in. Try and get zoomed into a couple block area if you could. I'm going to go into this Brushy Creek park area here. And once you get to an area of interest, you can go over to top left corner. There's a button that says export. Again, see it's putting the latitude, longitude in. Get the license to read, and you can export it. They list here this Overpass API, which is a really good tool. Again, it's the API for doing downloading of data. But when I hit export, again, it's .osm file. I'm going to save it. Nope, saved. Let me bring back my QGIS file. Turn that off. I'm going to turn off, just so I see the state of Iowa again. And let me go and bring in file I just downloaded. It's in my downloads folder. I'm going to drag that file, drop it on. Again, exactly okay. And then we can come in here and we can start to see some of the stuff I just downloaded. That was the early one. Sorry, I got the wrong one. Okay, well, I did this twice. This is the other one I brought in, but it's the same thing. If you bring it in off the website using that method, you can download an OSM file and then drag and drop that file into your QGIS. Okay, so openstreetmap.org has what you need. Any questions? Okay, so let's go back to the presentation here. So what we're going to work on right now is learning how to edit in OpenStreetMap. I put together 2 task sheets to help you do this. Again, I'm going to poke these into the chat URL for you. Let me copy the, and let me open the link in the new tab first so you can see these. So this is what task sheets look like. I mentioned these. This is one done for ID editor. This is version 2 of the editor. And sometime in the last month and a half or so, I guess, they did update from ID editor 2 to ID editor 3. And I've been using 3 already. But this is just a good general overview of the editor and how things work. And so this is on how to edit using edit making task sheets. So the first one coming in here, this first URL is probably the one you're going to want to download the PDF for, but I will provide you this second one. This is the more general one that's not just focused on sidewalks. So both kind of cover the same thing, but one, we made a version for a workshop we did on doing sidewalks. You can use either one. Okay, so those PDFs will walk you through how to edit them, but I'll show you how we do this. We end up with an interface that looks a lot like this. And on here, basically we're adding points, lines, or area. Their polygons are called areas. You can see the nodes of what other people have edited. So you do have to be careful when you're doing this, that you don't, you can go mess other people's data up. Typically they're notified when stuff gets changed that they've added. And so if someone's in here really messing things around, it does get usually caught and stopped before it gets goes through the system. That's not always the case. There are some things, bad things that happen when people do, they'll change the label on a building or something like that and someone misses it. But for the most part, there's a pretty good overview process, a review process that keeps things like that out. So I'm going to go over to my OpenStreetMap. And again, this is where you can follow along. At openstreetmap.org, you are going to have to go and log in. And I'm just realizing I want to do this in my other browser. So let me pull this. Other browser in for this. So get logged in. And so I'm logged in as CJ Seeger-LVM is my username here. And again, I'm going to look at this neighborhood. And I think there's a fence in this area we're going to work on. So you can log into wherever you want, a community, hometown, wherever you're interested in taking a look at this interface. We'll do actual more editing in a few minutes in the rest of the workshop, but I'll show you how this works as a standalone. So again, you don't have to do anything right now. If you want to just watch, you can. If I go up to the edit menu, and I should clarify, you're going to do this exact same thing in a few minutes in our workshop. It's just that I have a specified area for you to work. But this exact tool is just inside of a confined area. But if you want work on your DSPG projects, you just come in here, log in, you're going to click edit. The Windows screen is going to update to the editor view. It's a second to load. By default, it turns on the aerial image. You do have different layers you can use. There's Esri World. You can put a custom one in. When we work in a little bit here, you'll have a custom background you can choose. Okay, and I think I'm gonna keep this Esri World on right now. I'm gonna zoom in to this house. It's right here. And a couple things I see that are missing is there's no driveway. We can connect the house to the street by adding a driveway. That's a line feature. So I'm gonna hit line. I'm going to touch. It's very important when you connect lines that are part of a network. You can't just go and draw out here in the middle. You do need to intersect with the street. Same would be true of sidewalks. I'm going to come across here and I'll bring it up and I'm going to touch the front of the house. Double click. Over on the left side of the menu, it gives me options. It knows it's a line. Well, now what's this line represent? It represents a driveway. If you don't see driveway here, you can type it in and search. So it's a driveway. There's other fields to put in. Okay. For driveways, I don't add typically anything additional. So there's nothing to add on this particular one. If you're done with that feature and it looks good, you can just hit the checkbox. And over on my right, it's going to tell me I have 3 features. It's because I've modified 1, 2, and the line is 3. I'm happy with this. I'm going to click the upload button. And I'm just going to tell it my change comment here is going to be that I add a driveway. Do I want someone to review my edits? For a driveway, I'm not worried about it. It's not that complicated. So I'll hit upload. And this change will now be uploaded into OpenStreetMap. Now, on the actual OpenStreetMap website, by tomorrow, I think I'll probably see this driveway starting to show up. Could be faster than that. If it's something that was a little bit more controversial, or if I ask someone to review my edits, it can take several days before it starts to show up. The other thing to be aware of is that just because it gets up to OpenStreetMap into their main database doesn't mean that it will show up in all the other OpenStreetMap derived maps that you see right away. Mapbox does a refresh, but it's not instantaneous. They refresh, they go grab a copy of OpenStreetMap data, bring it into their database is how they do it. A lot of companies do that. They'll go out to OpenStreetMap, download, just like we downloaded the data just a few minutes ago. They'll download the entire database and they'll update their own database and then they'll build off of it, use it somehow. But they might only update once a week, once a month. It's hard to say. Okay, so just be aware if you really want to see your changes, go to OpenStreetMap, the main core website, and then you can maybe see those changes. I'm going to add one more change in here. I do see that this house is a little bit off for where it should be. Sometimes that's the aerial being different. You can jump back and forth between 2 different aerials, and I think there's some actual adjustment that should be done. It looks like that was not drawn as nice as it could have been. So I'm going to come in here and see I made that kind of a weird angle. I pulled it in. Okay, you can right click and tell it to square a corner, and it will re-square that corner for you. Zoom in when you need to zoom in. So on buildings especially, people hate seeing walls that are crooked. Even though they might have been built that way, doesn't mean they have to look that way. Draw your shape, right click, tell it to square it. All right, so I think that house looks a little bit nicer. One other general rule now is I do want to go and add a driveway to this one. General rule of thumb is stick to one type of editing that you're doing, make those changes, upload those changes, and then come back and do their type of change or things you want to add. So I do want to add a driveway here, but right now I just want to push this one fix to this house, hit upload. I'm going to tell them I updated house shape. All right, I'm going to look here at the chat. People have questions right now about this? This is really addicting, by the way, to do. And going and adding people's driveways and fixing their geometry, I find to be a great stress relief to do things like that. For example, I just have to draw this fence because it's driving me nuts. That's not in. So we're going to draw this fence in here. Someone should have drawn that shed in. Here's my fence. Gets a little strange now that it touches the building. It's a little bit off, but sometimes different aerials can be off by a meter or two, and that's just the way it works. You can try and square this. That looks better. Okay, this is a fence. I don't know what type of fence it is, but we could have told if it was wood, chain link, or metal. On things like that that you can't tell and you really want to start putting data in, I recommend having another window open with Google Street Map. Drive down the street here through Google Street Map and just look out the view and see, hey, was that a wood fence or a chain link fence? And you can go and you can type in the correct information on it. But I'm going to say that that's good. Update it. Add a fence and upload. Okay, so that's editing in OpenStreetMap. When we're editing this here in just a bit, we'll be over in a neighboring town to this called Jefferson, Iowa, just a couple miles down the road, where we don't have as much information coded in yet. And so it'll be a good spot for us to work. When you're done doing your editing like this, you'll have to jump back to another tab and tell it that you're done with your task. So this next system we use is a task manager. Yeah, there's so much editing, Jesse. It's a lot of fun, and that's why you do try and pick an area and work on it block by block, truly. And I do really recommend when you sit down and do it, don't jump around like I did to think that item. Go in here and just maybe say, hey, today I'm going to go put the rest of these driveways in that are missing. Okay. I obviously haven't come back here in a while, but 2 months ago, I think I did this block and got all the driveways in and the fences in and fixed. This was a weird one over here because I put the sidewalks in. Okay, you can see the sidewalks. Did not put the sidewalks into the individual units yet, but I put this in and drew it, but there's no sidewalk or no way to connect these sidewalks to the street itself. And you do want to have your networks connected, and you sometimes will have floating sidewalks. But what needs to be done in this case is that we had to draw the driveway in. So the driveway was put in from here, connects it, crosses the sidewalk. That's very important too, I should mention. When you put in a driveway like this, you click on the center of the road where it crosses what could potentially be a sidewalk. Even though the sidewalk, it goes through here and it stops and becomes driveway, you still want to intersect those lines. You just got to think of it as a network, water flowing through the system, and then bring it in. You could potentially draw the shape of this parking lot in here as well. So it's kind of endless. I do recommend if you are really wanting to do a bunch of this, do read through their brief guide on how to go and put in some of the land cover and other types of items. There are some general rules that the person should follow. Okay, so I'm done editing. I didn't mess anything up, I don't think. Good. It's always a win. The next item that I have, go back to our workshop here, is we're going to work on an OpenStreetMap task campaign. We're going to do this for the next half hour. And so I'll give you a URL that you need to go to. And again, for sure, and speak up if this doesn't work, because this is the part that I can not really do unless I get your feedback if it's not working. We've always done this in group settings in the past where we've had like a workshop in mapping, and we've had people with their laptops in the same room, and we can always see if people are connected or not. So I cannot tell if you're connected really unless you tell me that it's not working. But you're going to go to this website right here. I'll come back and do that as well. And so I'm already logged in. And so this little town down here is Jefferson, Iowa. It's the OpenStreetMap to give you a sense. You can see my mouse cursor here. This little spot right here I'm circling, that was Ogden. So just down the road, this is Jefferson. This polygon represents the area that I've identified for us to map in today. The reason you see all this different color on this map is because that's data that has been coded for land use cover. OpenStreetMap shows all of that. If you were taking this into something called Mapbox, you can make your own map styles in which you could say, hey, I don't want to see any of the land cover. I only want to see roads. And you can make a data layer or a map base layer that's just roads. And that all comes out of Mapbox. That's you style. Basically, you're styling or filtering the OpenStreetMap data to show only what you want. And then of that data, you can decide, I want my roads to be blue. I want my rivers to be red. Okay, you can make all kinds of styles using Mapbox. But to help get them data, we're going to go in here and work on Jefferson. So hopefully everybody's to this page. You've logged in, and we're going to come down here and say we're ready to get started. We're going to map. Well, let me zoom in here first. These little boxes are all the areas I defined. You can subdivide boxes and subdivide again to make smaller areas. So that's why we see this grid in here. A couple of colored polygons are areas that have been completed. And it tells this legend right here for us. But on this page, please click Map. And it's going to ask you to select either a random task, or you can click a box. I should zoom in a bit. So you can pick one of these boxes, one of the bigger boxes. I'm going to pick one here. And when you select a box, what it's going to do, it's going to lock that area as the area that you are mapping. So no one else can be mapping in that area right now while you are doing it. So I'm going to select one, and I'm going to tell it I want to start mapping. So it highlights it. And now I've locked that spot as mine that I want to use. I'm going to start my editor. As it loads up here, it'll take me back into editing session. You can see my boundary box that shows my area that I'm going to work on. Okay, now if you want to work on buildings, you can just do outlines for buildings today, or if you want to put in a sidewalk, that'd be great. I'm going to do the sidewalk that's right down here. It's in my area. I'm going to zoom in. If you go over to the layers, I'm using a custom data layer. That's programmed in for everybody. If you hit the ellipse on it, you'll see here's the URL to this custom data layer. Just know that right now this is a proxy file I've set up using data from the OrthoGIS server at Iowa State. Showing you that actual server this afternoon. But if you have, basically what I'm telling you is if you have another data source that serves imagery tiles up that you want to use, you can use those inside as your background. If I switch to the Bing aerial, it looks like this. It's a little bit sharper. Yes or eyes, that's even sharper yet. I got a pretty good sense of where that sidewalk goes. Okay, so let me zoom in here a little more. I'm going to draw this sidewalk in. So it's a line. I'm going to start it. It looks to me like it actually comes to the edge of the street. So I'm going to start it right here. I got to click the street. And I'm a little high there, but that's okay right now. I'm going to click it here. I'll run it across. Close it there until it's a sidewalk. And I could tell if it's concrete, and it probably is, but I'll leave that off for right now. Hit this little and click on it and adjust it. Knows I edit it though, since it touched the road, I can move the whole thing, so you do have to be careful. Okay. Now, one of the things you can do is we don't know what kind of crosswalk that is. I just did as a full sidewalk, and that's a good start to do it that way. Another thing that you can go and do is you can, when you draw a new line here, I'm gonna draw another sidewalk in going north-south here. Intersect this sidewalk. I bring it up just to the edge of the road, and I stop it. Okay, and I'm gonna do that up here too. I'm gonna put this sidewalk in. We can go back and extend these in a bit, but those two lines actually represent my sidewalk. So I'll put this one in. It knows there's a warning here that it doesn't connect to anything. It's okay for a moment. Back click this one. It doesn't have a feature type, so I need to find out what type of feature that is. You can go back through and you can select the feature type. Tell that's also a sidewalk. That one's okay because it touches this line. What's missing is there's no actual crosswalk across the street here. We want to have those in. As someone that does community transportation analysis and network modeling, I want to see crosswalks in. And so even though there's no painted crosswalk that I can see here, it is still a crosswalk. So I'm going to click on the end of my sidewalk. I need to click on the center of the line that makes the road and click on the other end of the sidewalk. Okay, and now it says, well, it wants to know what this is. So I'll select a feature and I'm going to look for crosswalk. You don't see it here, I'll type it in. Okay, it's a crosswalk. It's an unmarked crosswalk. Right here, unmarked crossing. Select that. That's okay. All right, and you can see it changes it just a little bit the way it looks. All right, so I'm okay with what I've done here for the moment. There's more editing obviously to do, but I'm gonna push these edits up. And I can leave this changes comment in here, or I could put that in there and then say added sidewalk. Don't have any warnings. I'll hit upload. Changes are done. I'm going to close my window for this editing session. And I can come back here and I can say, all right, I worked on that. And I've checked this block out for 2 hours, but I'm going to be done mapping it. So I can hit stop mapping. It returns that block back into the pool for people to use. And you can continue. So I see other people are going in here. They got some checked out. What I want to have you do is go ahead and you each will get your own box. Pick a box that you want and go ahead and try and edit a couple things in it. Just remember when you're done editing, push your edits up, close your browser tab, and then come back to this screen and tell it to stop mapping, and that will release that block back. And there's two separate things going on. There's an editing window, and then there's just this manager window. They are not complete. This manager window is truly not blocking anything going on in OpenStreetMap. It's here just for a reference for us to know who's working on what. So when we're doing a workshop, we aren't trying to do the same thing. It does get tricky when you get to edges of your boundary area. Sometimes you just end up having to go over a little ways, save it, push it, and then other people will see it quicker. Okay, so if you have questions, poke them out onto the chat window. I'm gonna be here to help, and then we'll spend the next 22 minutes just doing this, and then we'll take a break at 11:30 and come back at 12 o'clock Central Time. You guys are working, I might as well select. I'm going to do this little square up here, and I'll start my editor. So on mine, on my map here, I'm kind of making a couple of decisions that there's driveways into these little farm locations, 2 driveways, and this other one's more of a service road, not really a driveway. So driveway is not a feature for you. Okay, let me look and see here. When I hit line, I'll delete this when I'm done, but when I hit line, and after I double click, it doesn't show up on the side, but if I do a search for driveway, see if it shows up for you then. If you don't have driveway, you can type in service road. And so on my screen here, my top one's service road, but there's a sub menu of service roads. And if I click it, a driveway is a type of service road. An alley is a type of service road, emergency access, a drive-through, a parking aisle, just a general service road. They're all those are subtypes of service road. So you need to, you have a service area. Okay, make sure you're drawing with the line and not the area tool. You're not actually drawing a polygon around it. You're just drawing a line representing the center line of the road. I think that's the difference. Because yeah, if I try to draw a, let me delete this one. Delete, you can just right click on a feature and hit the delete button. So if I try and draw an area, like I did here, and I type in service, I also get service area. So yeah, so you are using line. Okay. Let me see here, Kent. Let's abandon the one you just drew and let's draw one together and see what happens. Because when I just hit line tool, I'm not going to touch anything. I'm just going to draw in the middle of a field or draw over a house, and we'll delete it. If I just go and draw a basic line in, and I go to search, if I do a search for the word road, I do get service road in the bottom. You get a bunch of types of roads. Kent, you're accessing this from another part of the world. There are other words to describe, even in English, what these features might be. And we run into that sometimes. See if you can do this. If driveway didn't show up, but service road or service does, let's see what happens. There should be some type of service for a line. I think that one is, since that's a main category, that word does exist. Service area. Huh. Could you tell that line to be a fence? Just curious. Yeah, see if you can get to fence. I just want to see what it's doing. Get bench. Well. What happens if you draw a polygon? Can you get a building? Oh, okay, one thing too. Kent, are you seeing an interface that looks like this that has three buttons on the top of the page to choose which one you want to do? Okay. So yeah, let's try drawing an area. I'm curious what you get for your options when you draw an area. So I have this area here. What do you get over on the left? What's one of your first items that you see?
So I have like the same thing, but my first thing is service area.
So the first thing, yeah, the order of these might be different. It might have some type of intelligence it's trying to use. So if your first one's service area, can you go ahead and just type in word house? I'm just curious if it shows a house for you then.
I have house.
Okay. Can you type in, I just want to see some of these are the same. If you type in field, what do you get?
The same thing as you.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna delete my polygon that didn't mean anything. I'm gonna go back to line. I'm just gonna draw a line on here. And so after I drew my line, mine starts with fence. What does yours start with?
Mine starts with service area.
Service area. So it's not updating. It's not recognizing that you actually drew a line.
No, but I have like crossing, crosswalk, and traffic signals thingy.
See, I cannot even get If I draw a line, I cannot even get a service area. But you just can't get driveway.
Yeah.
And you can't get service roads.
Yes.
Huh. Tempted to have, if you have any good edits, post them up, exit out of OpenStreetMap web tab that you're in, so it takes you back to the task manager, hit stop mapping, or you don't have to hit stop mapping, just bring it back here and tell it to start the editor again. Is your edit, make sure your editor says ID editor when you start, and then let's see what happens again.
Do I just close it? Do I just close it?
Yeah, if you don't have anything to push up, you can just close it. That's fine. And then by closing the web page, going back to the other page, tell it to launch the editor again, make sure it says ID editor, and let's see what that does. The same thing on mine, just because I make my change. There are different editors. I mean, there's this JASM, Potlatch, and Field Papers. And there's another beta of this version of the editor that I like even better than this one, that lets me store in the top menu up here some of the things I do the most. So I do a lot of sidewalks and houses and driveways. I can put all three up here as buttons, which makes it a little bit faster. But that's still only in beta.
Okay, it still doesn't work.
Well, it doesn't work. Okay. What web browser are you using?
I'm using Google Chrome.
Yeah, it should work. Chrome or Firefox. I'm going to have to do some investigation on that and ask some questions. Can you take a screenshot of that for me and send to me later here? When you're trying, draw a line on the page and have it show. So you're drawing a line, obviously, and it shows me service areas. And then if you can send me that screenshot, I'm going to shoot off an email this week to the guy that manages Learn OpenStreetMap, because he knows everything, and see what he has, what he can tell me. I'm really curious. And once you've done that, in the meantime, you can go back and just map a couple houses. Yeah, that seemed to work. As you do this, it becomes really clear real quickly to you that there's a lot of detail for each of the features that you could add. Like I just add this one building. I don't know the name of that building. I know it has some type of trucking industry related to it, but I'm not sure what the name of it is. So I can't add it in. But as people keep going and refining stuff, especially local citizens, if you get them involved, they'll know what the names of some of the businesses are and they'll put them in accordingly. So someone might know that, let's say a building's a church, they must just call it a church, but they don't know the actual type of church that it is. And so they'll identify it as a religious building, but that's all the further they can go. But someone local might know that, oh, it's a Lutheran church, Catholic church, whatever, whatever it is. They might actually put the accurate name on it. If you can get accurate names on business entities, it really helps, and just fills out your community more. So that's why it's good to have these workshops in local communities, because the local citizens know the information, and they're the ones that can contribute the most to this citizen empowered mapping project. For example, I'm trying to do this grain bin here, and it wants to put the building icon on it because it thinks it was a building. Person's tempted to put a silo on it, but as those of you in Iowa know, that's not a silo because silos are much taller. So in some of these, it's better just to make them be a generic building or structure, and then go do a little research and find out what type of word is best to use. Okay, actually, maybe I will end up making this be a silo. And when I do that, I can tell what type of crops to be in it. I'm going to upload this one. I would like someone to review this edit and tell them I added as a silo. And ask if there's a better tag to use. So that's, someone can review this, upload it. All right, so as a couple of them are still editing here, I see that's great. Is once you get done editing, just make sure you close your editor, come back here and tell it you are going to stop mapping. And then if it's complete, you can tell me it's complete, but if it's not complete, you just stop mapping. And that way I know that there has been some activity in that area, but it's not 100% done yet. Whereas if I look over on the edge here, these little triangular pieces, there's nothing in them. And I checked those out, mapped them, and they were complete. So if I go back through later and I validate, when you do a workshop like this, you might have some people that know the software quite well. They can go through and kind of look and see what's been done, and they can validate it. And then they can lock it as well, so no one else can edit that area. So it's a pretty powerful little task manager that Teach OSM has put together. There's another one out there that's another task manager, but this one's really has a friendly interface to it, I think. Great, Kent. I'm glad you found the driveway. That's good. Yeah, Jesse, you've only touched the surface. It gets worse. And actually, I've been an OpenStreetMap user for a long time. I don't do a lot of my own OpenStreetMap mapping. I tend to, when I had to get permission to set up this lab, I'm still considered on this account to be a beginner because I haven't mapped very many features with this account. Even though I have another Iowa State account I have had mapped significantly more with. That's the one I use more for work. The CJ is my account, so I don't claim any ISU authority for those features I map in here. But my other CJ Seeger one, that one I use to get started when I work with students as interns. We will get them mapping stuff. So those of you that heard about the Marshalltown mapping project that we did for DSPG as a trial pilot a year ago, 2 or 3 of my students that worked with me, Ahmad probably did most of the work, but he went into Marshalltown and mapped all of the sidewalks in there. No, don't mark it completely mapped, just mark it as just be done mapping it for now and then. Well, you won't mark it completely map unless you know that whole box of stuff in it. So yeah, so just yeah, they went through and we mapped all the sidewalks into Marshalltown in OpenStreetMap, as opposed to we could have just drawn everything in our own local GIS using aerial imagery from Iowa State and done the same thing and then used those sidewalks in our analysis and done the work we were going to do for Marshalltown. But it made a lot more sense to do our editing directly in OpenStreetMap because then we were providing public good right away by digitizing that data in. And then we did an extraction of those sidewalks. We were using ArcGIS Pro when we did this, but we did an extraction of the sidewalks using that tool, a tool they have, brought them in to ArcGIS Pro, or just ArcGIS Desktop, I guess, where we did network analysis. And in the network analysis, it basically said, we went to each bus stop, and at each bus stop, we asked it, okay, if I'm at this bus stop and it had a tolerance, we said to be within a certain distance of the road network. But if I'm within this distance of the road network and sidewalks, show me how far I can walk from this bus stop, draw a buffer around that area that's limited to 1/4 of a mile. And so we took all those, and from each bus stop within a 1/4 mile walking distance along this network, we could find out what areas were not being served by a bus stop based on that 1/4 mile distance. So, but we did that all based on data we pulled back out of OpenStreetMap. All right, it's 11:30. The system's open if you want to keep mapping. If you want to come back here later and keep mapping and playing around with it, feel free to do so. Jefferson, Iowa will love it because I got projects coming up there next year. So I'll use this data at that point as well for those projects. So with that, let's take a break until noon. And I think the video here just keeps running, but that's fine. So I'll see you guys back here at noon. All right, I think we're back. Can you see a screen that says addressing what 3 words?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, so before we get into the meat of the afternoon, I thought I'd put this thing up. Last week when we talked about addressing, I mentioned there's different types of addressing methods out there. And one of the ones that's kind of an interesting one is this thing called what 3 words. And this one has assigned all these locations. You can kind of see here's a road and looks like a building and some type of a green space and what have you. Each of these little squares has been assigned 3 words, and they're 5-character words. Those words are enough to describe a location. Instead of a latitude, longitude, 3 words are used, and there is a index system that helps the computer index find an exact location. I can't remember if it's 3 meters or how far hard it was, but it's really close. And so we can take a look at this here real quick. Let's take a look at, you can go through and read this. Google's behind this, as you probably can imagine. But yeah, square meters, 3 meters by 3 meters are the size of those squares. So that's a world map of 57 times 10 to the 12th. So it's quite a large area, or a large number of squares that are provided in order to get a network that's like this. You can look up what 3 words for your address if you want. I'll put this in the chat if you want to try this. Okay, so this is an example of one location here, but let's type in Ames, Iowa. And this particular spot in Ames, Iowa, depending what the grid is here. This little grid right here, this little spot is backs.polite.pill is the name of that location. So anywhere I click on this map, it tells me. So we have a research park office, which in days without COVID, I'd be sitting about right here to teach this class, and I would be a fixed shapes flash, I guess, would be my location of my office. So anyways, this is called What 3 Words, and that's a locator. I guess it didn't snap over for me, but kind of a neat tool. How it gets used later on, I'm not sure, but it's a neat indexing system that's different than using numbers. There you go. I like that. Glorious barrier trendy. Yeah, some of them are not so flattering. You can get kind of what makes you want to move 10 steps over, I guess. All right, so that's what 3 words. That was kind of fun. We're getting a few more people back here. Good. All right, so this afternoon, I want to talk about importing data, and we'll use a couple of different things to use. My afternoon, while it does have a bit of structure to it, it is not as well as rehearsed, and it's open for more so questions. Who did this, or let's try this out. So definitely let me know if there's some things we want to look at. So importing data. Okay, so importing data. I want to look at some aerial reference imagery, and let me show you a website here that I have. So in Iowa, and I'm sure Virginia's got something like this too, I just couldn't find it yet. In Iowa, we have the Iowa Geographic Map Server. This is a group or an organization, an application that's managed by the Iowa State Geographic Information Facility. And they were really early adopters of this stuff back in the late 90s. MIT had a pilot project to put together and test out some type of a tool that could provide aerial imagery to farmers was the main thing. Because there's USDA would do flights and be able to, they were color infrared, and they could show crop information and stuff like that. And they need some type of a web viewer. And so over time, there's been newer technology put together, different types of viewers. GIS became more of an online tool and all kinds of stuff. But this data system, or this repository, has continued to be added to over the years. And so one of the things, it's ortho. If you want to take a look here, I'll put it in here. You don't have to go look at this now, but if you just want to watch the screen, you can. In this ortho.gis.iastate.edu, and also I should mention, for some reason this website was not loading in Safari on a Mac, and I'm not sure if it was on a PC. I need to have them check something, but it works in Firefox and Chrome. So we go over here and we look at map viewers. They have several different viewers. They have a leaflet viewer, which I will come back to later on, but I'm going to open a new tab for now. Excuse me. The one they have is this classic viewer I'm going to go to. So this is the classic viewer that they put together many years ago with slight modifications. And it's kind of cool. It's pretty basic. You could zoom in on a location. And you have little buttons for zoom. There wasn't an actual zoom box on it. But what I can do is I can come in here and let's see if I can find, not sure what this is, but we'll take a look at this airport area, okay? This must be near Webster City. See the airport here? We can change the different types of base maps that we have. So what's showing in this? Maybe we want to see the aerial photo from the 1990s, USGS. I can click it, tell it to refresh my map. There's the USGS aerial photo from that time period. This list has got a lot of stuff. Let's look at this spot in the 1970s. Okay, runway was there. Looks like it was a dirt runway at that point. We can even jump back to, they have almost every decade a photo to the 1930s. Nothing in the 40s with the war and stuff, but 1930s, there was no runway there. It was just a field. Okay, so kind of neat. You go back here and get see this information, but it's nice to see this in a web viewer. It'd sure be nice to bring this in maybe to QGIS or something. So with this particular tool, you have you can direct connect to this server if you want. It's got a REST endpoint, so you can connect to it that way, and you can add these data layers to come in directly into QGIS, and you can add those in as URL links. But that might not be as important for people, of course, not in Iowa. So I won't show you that right now, but I will show you how you would download a TIFF or a JPEG image and bring it in. So in this case, let's say I wanted this image. I can come up here and I can just tell it that I want to download it as a JPEG. If you get the JPEG, you have to get the JPEG world file with it. JPEG 2000, an ArcMap layer file, or as a GeoTIFF. You can also tell it what size I want. So maybe I want this to be a little bit wider. So let's go 1000 by 800 pixels, refresh it, a little bit bigger area. And then this is a 5 megapixel image. If I go to 2, see what happens in this one. Pretty good. Those are good because they've scanned them and enhanced them. I'll tell you that, I just moved my map, but the old 1930s, these were all printed aerial images on, they were photographs. They scanned them all in, they rectified them, and they geo-referenced the corners in order to get these into the system so they could use it. So let's say I want that image. You do some type of historical mapping on field patterns or vegetation, what have you. I can go up here and I can click GeoTIFF. I click GeoTIFF. It's going to ask me if I want to save it. So I will. And now I have it saved. I can see where I saved it to. My downloads, I think. I'm going to open this TIFF file. And so here's the same TIFF file as an individual graphic file, just like anything else that's been downloaded. If I downloaded the JPEG file, JPEG image would look the same. Let me get the JPEG world file. I'll open that for you so you can see what's in a world file. It comes down as what the extension of .jgw. So you might have to tell it that you want to open it with a text editor instead. Open here. All right, and so text files, my background, things I'm working on. But here, this particular file has just a couple lines of code. It's telling me that's a 2-meter resolution. Here's my 2-meter resolution. Okay. Information on the coordinates in one of the corners. I remember which corner it is. I'd have to look, but all the JGW file needed was to know one corner of my photo and the resolution for pixels. And what it's able to do is just figure out from the one corner how to locate this image, because it's square. All the pixels are square, and then it can locate it in your system. So, but you have to have that file along with the JPEG image in order for it to work, and they have to be named the same. So this one, when you download it, was just WMS server.jgw. If you downloaded this JPEG, I should download that. Right click and tell it to save the link as an image. When you save that image, you give it a name. Make sure you go back and make sure the JGW and the JPEG have the exact same name, because that's how the system knows to go and link those two together. They just have a different extension is all. So now that we've brought that in, let me go back to my QGIS earlier. Get rid of this stuff. Let me zoom to my extents. As I mentioned, I downloaded that ortho TIFF file, so I'm just dragging it from my downloads folder onto my map instead. I could have browsed for it too, but drop it on here, show it up right here. Right click, zoom to it, and there's that image in place on my map. Okay, we're going to use this in a little bit to do something, but this gives you an idea. If you guys want to go ahead and try that right now in QGIS, let's go ahead and do that. I want you to practice bringing in an image. What you need to do to get QGIS set up for this afternoon is start out with Iowa County _UTM 15 as your first layer. Then go to that ortho.gis Iowa State website. Go ahead and zoom someplace on the map. I don't care how big it is for right now. And then tell it you want to download the TIFF and drag and drop the TIFF over onto QGIS. Okay, so let's give you about 4 minutes. It's 12:18, so 12:22. See if you can go do that. And if anyone isn't quite ready at that point, let me know. Or if you have questions, put them in the chat, please. And Tom, I will try to answer. Or feel free to use your mic and just ask a question. So we're bringing down an aerial photo. I should mention on this ortho website, there's a few other fun ones that are in here that you can look through. But one of them I'll tell you, if in the 2017, one of these years only has half the state because they only had money to fly half the state one year and the other half the other year. We can flip this to, these are the indexes. I guess you want to be down here, you want to pick the ortho photos. This is the color infrared, same area. We also have in here not just aerial photos, but they have colored hillshades. So that'd be really boring because it's pretty flat. But you can see the hillshade. This is from LiDAR data that shows the roads and the little ditches that go along the runway. So you can see the fields in here because you can see the fence line. Dirt's mounted up there just a little bit higher than the rest. You can even see the furrows a bit to know what direction they tend to cultivate these fields. It's pretty cool stuff. It's more fun to look at areas that have mountains and stuff like that. But in Iowa, we have to be satisfied with drainage ditches, I guess. Speaking of which, here's a drainage ditch, bottom right corner of this map. Okay, so everybody getting a chance? Yep, I can show you those steps again. So I went to my ortho site. Let me do this in our browser though, okay? So I'm assuming you have QGIS up and running and you've added the Iowa UTM 15 North base layer. Okay, I'll make that assumption. I should mention one reason, well, this is actually a really important tip. Whenever you start a new GIS project, always start with a data layer that is in the projection of the system that you want, or the data projection that you want to use for your project. And second, it should be larger than the area of your project. So even if I'm working with just a city, I might want the entire county, or better yet, I take the entire state. I've got another data layer that I use a lot. It's just an outline of Iowa. And I know the coordinate system. That's the first data layer I put on. I don't care if you're using QGIS or if you're using ArcGIS products, you do this first. It'll save you many headaches because the first layer establishes the projection of the project. And once you have that established, then all your units are what you want them to be and everything. The system is smart enough then to know how to do some more stuff by having the correct projection, as opposed to you bringing in something in the wrong projection and then telling it to modify, because then on the fly, it's even having to do more work and it just bogs down the system. So always bring in a data layer. You can always turn that data layer off or hide it, but bring in a data layer larger than the area you want to work. So you got that done. You come to the ortho photo server, go to map viewers, come down to classic viewer. You can take this entire image right here if you wanted, or you can zoom in. So when you take this image, you're not going to get all this extra overlay information. You're going to just get it's the town of Sheridan. Image that we want. These are just overlays to help as you work your way through it. We'll maybe grab spring 2016. That's Eastern Iowa. Let's go to 2015. Refresh it. Okay, that's the map I want. Just tell it you want to download a GeoTIFF, and it will download the TIFF file that you can then drag and drop into QGIS. Anybody else have any questions on doing this? I'll right click that one. I haven't called Nate 2015. If I knew this was of Sheridan, I should probably rename it. We'll go back over to QGIS and the one I just downloaded. Put it over here too. Now I have two of them. I have one right here, one right here. You can see the two spots I have those images. If you were adding additional servers, I'll close my favorites for a moment. You could add the WMS or WTS information here. I can try this once and show you, and it practices ahead of time. They changed a few things on the server, but we'll try it here real quick. So let me go back to this website. In here, they have a list of WMS directory and REST services. We'll see what we get when I do one of these. Let's say I wanted to pull in the LiDAR hillshade, the color version, and I have no idea if this is going to work, so we'll see. Copy this address, copy that URL, back in QGIS. I'm going to tell it I want to add a WMS service. Probably opening up a window for me. Tell them I want a new connection. Paste the URL in here. No authentication. Open this up and expand it. Good news is it found out that it was LiDAR color hill shade for me. So if I turn off my county map and these two NAPE ones I brought in, I could take this layer and drag it down. And hopefully, to wait for the internet, there it is. So it pulled in entire hillshade for Iowa. And let me put that, since it's a statewide layer, I'll bring it to the bottom. Turn on my Iowa map and I zoomed it extents. You can't see it because it's hidden by the filled in shape of the counties. But remember, we can change that. If I go to the properties, instead of a simple fill, click simple fill, I can tell it to do a simple line instead. And I'm going to make my line color be white. And there we go. So now we have a really nice looking map as a base. Does anybody want to see that again? Let me know. We'll do one of those again. It's kind of cool that you can bring in WMS. There's a lot of WMS data sites out there, just like there's ArcGIS sites out there and servers, and you can pull those all in. It's just that there's several different different technologies for sharing this data online. Okay, and you just have to choose the one that you need. Ours is the one Iowa State. I think is one of the more friendly ones. Because you don't need a password. When you think about the amount of data being shared, it's quite amazing. So let me go back and do that again. Again, QGIS is set the same. I'm not changing anything in QGIS right now, other than I have a base layer. I'm getting something called the WMS directory. WMS is a little bit older technology than the rest. Let me show you the REST services. Come up. These REST services, they just have a different format to them. They're designed for ArcGIS use, and they're served off of ArcGIS server. WMS is more open source type of stuff. Oh, let's look at GLO vegetation. Okay, so the URL is right here. So I'm going to copy that URL. I'm going to just click this link so you can see what's in it. So if I click the link, my old major professor, I shouldn't say old, but my major professor back in the 90s, this was his project. One of his big projects was to go through land survey records from the 1800s. They had little sketches on paper sketches and lots of notes describing all the vegetation as they surveyed the state. And he digitized all that information and interpreted all of it and put this all together to make this map. And that's why we have an idea of what was the land cover of Iowa in the late 1800s. And so this information just tells you more about the data set itself and where it comes from. And I think it links to a page that has the legend that goes with this for the colors that we're about to see on the map, okay? So you personally come here and get the legend. But right now I was just demonstrating that you're gonna copy this URL. I'm gonna go back over to QGIS. This is a WMS data layer. So I'm going to, I already have the one data layer in here that I saved. I'm gonna right click and tell it new connection. This one is Iowa GLO veg. Here's the URL. This one doesn't require me to add anything else. So I hit OK. It shows up in my list over my browser list here. I can expand it. It says layers, and there's polygons and there's an image. There's two different things being served up by this. I'm going to, before I do anything, I'm going to turn off my color hill shade. I'm going to bring in the GLO veg image. So I'll just drag it from my browser down to my layers list. It has to go out and get that layer for me. And there it is. Okay. Again, I have to go with the key to find out what each of these mean. But there is a legend that tells us. And then you could read, if you were to download the actual, this data is available as an image. It's also available as polygons. Let me bring that in too. This might take longer to get, but here it comes in as actual polygons for each of those boundaries. I don't know if you can. So on this one, or let me get a better one here. I click this one here. Tells me what it is. This is PTIM. That's gonna be timber. So this area was timber. I can get that information from it. Here we're getting it through a web service. If I was really doing a project with this, I'd go to the actual website and I could download the shape files with the same information, and I can download it for each county. In Iowa, like many counties or many states, we have GIS repositories where you can go and get state data. This is a state data layer, and you can download data for just one county. This is the veg polygon. There's some limitations what I can get to. You see, I can't really get to its attributes. I can just really see it on a map. If you had the shapefile, then you could go and you could style it, and you could set, like, there's several different types of timber based on how they're described. But you could say it doesn't matter how it's described. All timber is going to be dark green, and you could limit this list of how many items we have here. All of these items you could limit back down to just a handful of, it's a water, it's prairie, it's a timber, or it's barren. It could be just 4 things. That's called reclassification for those of you that are curious about the GIS term for that. Okay, is that pretty cool? You can bring other outside stuff. Should be able to do the same thing. I know this is the question you were just wondering. Can we do this in R? Should be able to. Because it's a WMS data layer, we should be able to bring in some of this as background, just like we could the natural Earth data sets. Should be able to bring this in as backgrounds. Now, one thing to be aware of, since we're working, most of us working from home, this does take up bandwidth. There's a lot of data coming through here, so it takes a while to load. If you're doing a serious project like this, make sure you get on a good some good Wi-Fi or a good direct line if you're really trying to do heavy work, because every time I go and zoom in, so let me turn back on my hill shade. Every time I zoom in, it's going and getting the new squares for me, so it has to refresh. And then go in and get that data for us, okay? So this is kind of a fun data layer that they put together. And again, they just colorized the elevations, different colors to give it this look and feel. Okay, so that's raster data input. If I'm going to do those, I'd like to go and remove those from my library so that they don't have to be reloading. County back on. I can't see my county because if you remember, I turned my lines to white lines, so you can't see anything. It's one of those gotchas you gotta be careful of. Know what color your data layer is. So we'll bring it back. We're gonna keep it as simple lines, but now it's darker colors here. There, Iowa's back. That's their layer we don't need. Okay. Any questions at this point? I was importing data, aerial reference. Okay, importing point data and symbolizing points is the next thing I had for us. And so now I'm going to go back to my browser here, open up my favorites again. And if you download the file from this morning, online right now that still needs that link to the file this morning to download data, please put something in the group chat here and we can get that address back to you. So for I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna look through this list. Oh, good. Thanks for putting it up there, Tom. Yep. Tell me my internet's still unstable. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm gonna stop my video and just have my voiceover. So everybody can still see the screen.
Yep, we can still see it.
Okay, good. Thanks. Let me just check one thing here. Okay. What I was looking for in my list of data sets, I added in some coordinate files. And so let me see if I can open this up so you can see what I put together. I gave you my raw data in addition to my output so that we could look at everything. So I'm opening up an Excel file that has some sample coordinates in it. And I just made a file with some really just two simple coordinates in it. Gave a location, Park Lake, latitude, longitude, just separate columns, okay? Nothing, not a big deal here. If you had more attributes, so let's say you're making your own file or someone's given you a data file that has latitude and longitude in it, this is the process you'd use to get this data in. And maybe you have additional attributes that are in this file, okay? So for some reason, I don't know why it's like this yet. Maybe I can dig deeper and find you can do this, but it doesn't seem readily apparent to be able to just bring in an Excel file directly into QGIS. You can do that in ArcGIS, but QGIS wants you to bring this in as a CSV for some reason, or delimited file instead of just a Excel file. And it could be that there's a plugin we have to turn on, but we'll save this file as a CSV. And I've done that. And my CSV is this file right here. Again, you might think, oh, I'm going to drag and drop this one onto the layers and it's going to automatically show up. And it does not do that. What you need to do in this case is you have to go up to your layer menu and tell it you want to add a layer. So layer menu, add a layer, look for add delimited text layer. And I'll keep this here, we'll wait here about 30 seconds so that everybody can do this. And then we're going to navigate to the file called sample coordinates.csv. All right, so I'm going to add a delimited text layer. pop up dialog for you that should look like this. So I'll browse that file. Sample coordinates, open that up. CSV, geometry is a point. I do have to tell it my X field and my Y field if there was a Z field. So my X field, going left to right, it's gonna be my longitude. My Y goes north to south, so that's my latitude. What is the CRS on this one? This is just a standard basic world lat long file. So I'm going to choose one of my a standard one, which is EPSG 4326 or WGS 84. It's one I'll choose. Again, you can find these by selecting a course, and you can just type in WGS 84, and it's going to find various ones for you. Here's this one. If you're looking for just that same number, 4326, you could type in 4326, and there it is. It's a geographic coordinate system, okay, as opposed to a projected coordinate system. Geographic will be the globe, projected will be a flat grid of some sort. So 4326. It's a good one to have handy because it's just the standard one to have. I think this looks good. I'm going to hit add. Close. And what it's done for me is it's added these 2 points right here at those locations. Any questions on that at the moment? So like I said, bringing in points is as easy as that. It was based upon that CSV file. If I move my mouse over these sample coordinates, you'll see the address, my file name. It links to a .csv file. My recommendation, if you're bringing in data from a CSV, would be to go after you've brought it in like this and got it on the screen where it needs to be. And my recommendation here is the same in QGIS as it is in ArcGIS. Do an export if you're going to do a lot of work with this, because export it back out as an actual shape file and then work with the shape file. There are certain operations that go quicker, and there's also, when it comes time, if you're doing buffers, your buffer occasionally, for sure in ArcGIS, but I think in QGIS too, instead of getting a nice circular buffer, you might get more of an oval, just because of the way it has to interpret some stuff. If you export it out to a file that's in the same coordinate system as your main map is, so if I was right-clicking on this and I told it to export, I only have 2 features, but save features as, instead of in the original WGS 84 system, I would tell it to go and be in the UTM zone 15, same coordinate system that my Iowa map is in, and then I'd export it out. So why don't I do that? Some demo points, saving it. Looks good. These are points. I'll add the save file to the map. Okay. And brought on those same points. Okay. Again, if you didn't do that just now, that's fine, but just be aware that's good practice. So now I have these 2 points I mentioned. Since I have some points, I want to take the opportunity to talk about symbolizing points and some things that we can do. Because we talked about polygons just the other day. So it makes sense to look at points because we have a few more options with points. So I'm going to right click on here, come into properties, symbology. And I'm going to make it so I can see the 2. I'll do this again. I'll bring my points over to the side. This way you guys can see what we're doing. Okay, so for my points, it's a single symbol marker, simple marker. You can pick some of the pre-made points down here. And that's not a bad idea to do when you're starting out. So let's say those were airports. Okay. This particular icon is an SVG marker. You can make your own SVG icons, load them in, and use that. We had a case where we had to bring in some winery icon that looked similar to with that company's logo. So we had a copy of their logo, put into SVG, brought it in, and we marked all of their fields with points that look like their icon. That's all these are. These are SVGs. If I hit apply, all of a sudden I have icons that have gone from being dots to airplanes in this case. Bring it back up here, we'll make them diamonds. You can set the size. You do have to be careful with the size because if you go to do an export or a print of this, sometimes on your print layout, those icons end up being larger than they appear to be on the screen. So you have to do a little bit of tweaking to get that right, just a little trial and error. So we got that simple marker. It's a diamond right now. It's kind of neat. You can actually layer these markers. So while I did start the simple marker here, this is what it looks like. I can go and hit the plus symbol, have a second marker, which I can put above or below. So let's say I want to put a simple marker here. It's got a fill color. Red on top of green would not be good for those of us that are colorblind, so we're not going to do that. And let's put this yellow on here. Apply it, see how it looks. Now we have a diamond that's got a dot in the center. Okay, this is kind of a neat trick that you can do. A lot of times when you have point data, your point can only represent one type of entity, right? Well, what if let's say these were airports. And one was a commercial and one was a private. Well, the green symbol, or airplane symbol, whatever, could have told me that it was the airport. But the colored dot in the middle might have told me that it was private or commercial. So there are techniques that you can do through symbology, even though it's just one point, having two different colors overlap each other to provide information about this. If I was doing mapping of crash data, for example, since our one project team at Iowa State's doing some crash data, and I was looking at an area close enough where I could zoom in. Maybe it's a 2 or 3 mile square area that's had a fair number of accidents in the last decade. I could zoom into that area. I'd see all these points on the map. It tells me that those are crashes. Then I could take those that have that had alcohol related to them, and I could set them to have this additional symbol on top so that the symbol looked different for those. And to do that requires, in this case, we have a single symbol. You might want to be categorized. And I do have a category in this particular data set. I have the location. If I classify, I had a lake and a park. If I apply that, this is my lake, this is my park. If I double click the symbol for this one, here's where I can go and I can change it. You see it changed it there. Let's make it even more fun. Let's go back and let's make this simple symbol here this shape instead. We'll change its color to something a little bit more vibrant. Okay, so now I got two completely different symbols on my map, different colored dots in the middle, and I could be doing this based upon two or more attributes. So again, you could spend definitely the full afternoon playing around with symbology, but just know that when we get to points, we have a lot of options that we can do that we can't do with lines and polygons. You can make your own polygon styles as well, but gives you an idea. Any questions, excuse me, on symbolizing points or importing point data? Give you a second. All right, well, if you run into questions as you're working on projects later, just let me know. Okay, our next thing was geocoding. Oh, sorry, digitizing data. So does anybody know what digitizing data means, or any idea what we'd be doing for digitizing data? Give you guys a chance to comment here. Go ahead and use the mic if you want. Gotta hear from somebody. I gotta know that you're out there. Jesse, we are here. Okay, that's a good enough answer. Not knowing means I can let you know. So when we were working with GeoJSON the other day, we were actually digitizing data. We were drawing data. We were, sometimes you could just go and draw data. Now here, I mean, technically if I didn't have this image up here, if I started drawing on the map, I'm digitizing data. However, it makes a lot more sense to have an aerial image up or something if you are going to be digitizing data so that you can see what you're digitizing. So again, let me go to the whole state here. And I think I want to jump into and go back to my view. Okay, this will work. So this is an image that I brought in just earlier. And let's say I wanted to digitize this runway. Just draw a line. I'm just going to draw a line that represents this runway. Everybody should have a digitizing toolbar already available in their toolbar. But if it's not there, I'm going to show you the step to get it back because sometimes things get turned off. This toolbar right here, this pencil, this is part of my digitizing toolbar. It's this set right here of things is the digitizing toolbar. But if it got lost, you can right click anywhere here in the open space and you can see all the panels and you can see all your toolbars. And here's the digitizing toolbar, which you could toggle on and off. So make sure your digitizing toolbar is on. There's also a shape digitizing toolbar, which you could turn on and off, but we will leave it off. There is a snapping toolbar, which we could also turn on. It's the snapping toolbar. But for today, we don't need to use any of those, so we'll leave those off. So for basic digitizing, what I'm looking at here is saying that we're going to be digitizing basic features like drawing in shape of a building, doing similar stuff that we did to OpenStreetMap this morning, except we're doing it directly into our QGIS application. And so what I want to do is I want to turn on editing. Okay, so we can turn on editing. We can all, and that would let us go and actually edit any of the existing layers. We can start to edit them. In this case, I had the points, and it would let me edit the points. So let's say I want to make this be my airport. It's on, it's on. So it knows, see this icon here, it's got these 3 little dots around it, and there's I think it's a green asterisk or star. This is my color blindness here, but that's, we can add a point feature. These are also add icons over here. But I want to go and I'm going to click this tool. I'm going to go on my airport here. And I don't know if I should put the runway or the building. I'm going to put it over in the building. And it adds a point to this. It's up my other screen, but here's the point that got added. it pops up a dialog and says, what's the location, latitude, longitude. I don't have to type that in. This is the file that I brought in as a text file. It knows the latitude, longitude. It's going to store that somewhere else in the file. So this lat long will be blank, just because I don't know them off the top of my head. But I can tell it that it's an airport. Airport, hit OK. Icon got added. Now, I didn't have a symbol for this type of icon, so it just adds as a new generic one. You see it's this one right here. It's a generic. And I'm going to go and tell it to stop editing or save my edits. And I can toggle editing off. If I open up my attribute table, here's my airport. Okay, again, no lat long. That's just because I didn't bring it from a text file. That lat long is stored somewhere else in the shape. So that's in there. If I want to change its symbol, change its colors right here based in a basic item, or I can open it up. Oops. And I can tell it I want to classify airports now this color, all their values are that. Maybe I do want this to be an actual airport symbol. Now we have an actual symbol there for an airport. Okay, so, okay, mine is on, but grayed out. Jesse, make sure that you're, excuse me, the layer that you brought in, you imported a new layer. Sorry, not imported a new layer. The points layer, if you brought that in, that it's highlighted on the left, because that's the layer that you're editing. If you had your nape layer selected, those are not are layers you cannot edit, and therefore it will be grayed out. And this is a good point, because it's also very simple to accidentally be on the county map instead of being on the layer you want to edit, and you could edit the wrong layer. But do take a note of this. I'm not going to change the state of Iowa's counties at this point, but I do want to show you what happens if I turn the editor on. There's a polygon. Right up here in the top, my icon now has the polygon symbol with the add. This is what would allow me to add a new polygon to my map if I wanted to add polygon features. Okay, let me turn the editor back off. Once you start to know the interface icons too, this program makes a lot more sense. Remember the other day we talked about if you have a yellow in any one of these menus up here or buttons, that's because it deals with a selection. Okay, so I'd not planned to do that, but we just edited a existing shapefile. Next step for us is to edit or to create a new layer. So give me one moment here. I need to get another drink and we'll get going again. Okay, so to edit or create a new layer instead of editing a new layer, we have some options up here. I'll let the mouse go over these, hopefully they'll tell me what they can do for you, but these are our creation layers. Here's a new vector, and this opens up a new shapefile dialog. Feather looking one, a new spatial light layer. This should be a new temporary scratch layer. And this one, okay, this is called a virtual layer. I don't do those. So I do this one here, create a new shapefile layer. And first I'm gonna zoom back into my runway. Again, it doesn't matter what feature you guys have right now. Just if you have an aerial photo on your map, on your page, that's fine. Even if you don't have anything, you just have the state of Iowa and want to draw some shapes on there, that's fine too. But I'm going to create a new shapefile. I have to give it a name. And I'm going to call this one runways. Saved my data folder's fine. Shape, it's not going to be a point. So And guarantee at some point you're going to start digitizing a new layer and you're going to forget this step. You're going to tell it you want a line, and you're going to forget to tell it that you want a line. You're going to leave it as a point, and you'll end up with having to do it again. The dimensions, I'm going to put this into the same coordinate system as Iowa. So I'll set that. Now I have the opportunity to add fields to my database, or to my shapefile. So for the first one, I'm going to give, there's always an ID. I'm touching the screen here to point to it, but there's an ID right here. That's internal. That has to be there. I'm going to run in or add in a airport name. So I'm just going to call it name. It's text. I probably don't need 80 characters for it. I'm going to give it just 25. That doesn't matter. This button right here, add to fields list. As soon as I hit add, it'll put it down in this bin down here for me. So there's a string now called name. All right, let's say, runways have a length to them as well. And I'm gonna have to guess on this length, but let's add length to this. For length, I want it to be a whole number. And it's gonna be feet. So I'm gonna put _FT, so I know that it's in feet. Whole number, feet. Precision on this, there's no precision because it's not a decimal number. And if we have a 5 or 10,000 is a super long runway, that's like a 747 runway. That's 10,000 is 5 characters. We're not going to see anything more than that. I'll put 5. That's the maximum I did. Most likely have 4 digits in the length. Add to field. Puts it in here. And let's add one more. Let's call it runway, and that has to do with the direction of the runway. That's going to be a string though. Make that 15, add to list. Okay, so there we have our fields, information we want. We can hit OK. And now I can start. The runways is selected. Again, you might have had buildings, wherever you want is fine. I'm going to hit the pencil to edit. And I'm going to draw with the right tool here. So turn on the editor, then go over to the, in my case, it's going to be a line. I click the line drawing tool. I'm going to take this all the way down to the edge down here. And I guess I need to right click to close it. Okay, so if I right click to close it, it's going to ask for an ID. You can auto do these, but I'm just going to give it ID number 1. I'm going to call it Webster City Public because I don't know the real name. Its length in feet, gosh, I don't even know. I could have measured it, but we're going to say that it's 1,400 feet. And the runway, a lot of times they have numbers at the end. That's what we're referring to. This one's more like a 31 going this way, 180 degrees off of that going their direction. So this is more like a probably a gotta do my math here. 31 and I'm gonna fix one other thing here. And probably the 13th first one, but 1331 is probably the name of that runway. It's just the directions it is. So we put that, we hit OK. And when I'm done editing, I'll save it. And I can turn the editor off. It's hard to see, but it's there. And if I open up runways, there's my one record. We'll make this line be bigger so we can see it. Well, I can't see it because it's below my aerial photo. There we go. See, that happens. Make sure you get that layer above There we go. Now I can see that runway. Okay, so that's editing. Do we want to do that one more time on something? See, what time is it? Just 1 o'clock. Yeah, I think we can do it one more time. See, should we do do you guys want to do a polygon? Okay, let's do a polygon. I'm gonna turn on, again, if you don't have an aerial in here, that's fine. You can just draw one. But I'm gonna go back to this is another town. Okay. No idea what this building is, but we're just gonna call it the building. I need to make a new layer. Let's say I was preparing to go and draw in. Maybe some of the parks would be more fun. Or here's a school. I'm sure this is a school. Okay, we'll go ahead and put this school in instead. So to make a new polygon for this, I need to go over to my create shapefile, new shapefile layer. Give it a click to tell it where I want to save this file. I'm going to call this school or schools. Hit save. It's going to be a polygon. Need the fields, so I'm going to add in a name for the field. And I'm going to put grades in here. So we just have one more field. I put 80 by default for those. Let's see if I can change this one down to 20. You can't. Okay, so the way you have to do that is you have to remove it and just type it again. So this means this is common. Sitting and do this on the fly, it works, but I do recommend always, if you're going to be putting together some data sets, think through what your fields need to be, what they're going to look like, what the type of data they need to contain. So you can do this once. You do have more than one shot at this, but it makes sense to try and do it right the first time. So we'll put grades in here. We'll add that as a string of 20 characters. I want to make sure I tell it to be, again, instead of using lat long, use a projected coordinate system. I think we're good. So I created my layer for me. I'm not going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to make sure I get this up to the top of my stack so that I can see it as I draw it. And now that I have this new layer, make sure you make it active by clicking on it in the layers menu. I'm going to turn on editing. So note those two things don't necessarily happen automatically. Just because I created a data layer doesn't mean it starts editing it. You have to create the data layer, then you can start editing and populating it. So I'll turn that on. Here's my polygon tool. There's some other tools over here too that you can use for the vertex and to edit stuff. But first of all, you got to draw this polygon. And kind of wish I had a better aerial, but I have to work with what I have. Just clicking away. I right click to end it. Some programs you triple click to end it, but I'm going to leave this ID null for a moment. We'll see what happens. I'm going to call this short and public, and I don't know, but I'm going to say that it is 6 to 12. Hit OK. There's my new building. Right click on this. Oops. Get its attribute table. Okay. There's still no ID field here. So there's an ID number over here. So you can still go back to the editor and turn your your editor on, and you can put the number in there if you want to have your own ID assigned to it. It looks like they keep a dual system, but that's fine. Save this, turn our editor off. And there's our building. It does not have to be at the top of the list. Here's what happens though, Laura, if I don't have it at the top of the list and I accidentally have it below my images, here's my images over here, I can't see it. So I just go ahead editing it, but I can't see it. So it doesn't have to be the top of your list, but it does have to be above your aerial images. So even right here, yes, I have 2 aerial images, but those are not the ones of that I'm looking at. This NAPE 2015, this is my aerial image that I have to be above. Alternatively, I could just go take this aerial image, pull it to the bottom, and have it appear on the top of the stack. So it's up to you where you put it, but you just have to do layer management to get these located the way they need to be. Do a little editing. Go ahead.
Thank you. Got it now.
Yep. Well, I turn the editor back on here again. You can look at the vertex tool. With some of the shape commands you come in, you can do some editing. Let's see if I can on my school editing. Turned on. And now I can see the vertices. So I can come back in here now and I can do a little bit of refinement. Maybe I get a better aerial. I find a better aerial I want to use. I can trace things better. And there's tools to help you square things up and do stuff like that too, but as well. But what I'm doing, this is fine. You can right click on any one of these points and it shows you all of the coordinates down here in the bottom left. Kind of like we saw in the GeoJSON. That was by right clicking. Okay, so that allows us to reshape things a little bit. What's tricky is when we're doing buildings, we're fine here. If you were doing land cover is continuous. So after you do, let's say, outlined one field, your next field, you need to make sure you snap to each one of the vertices as you did it, because you can't have any gaps. If you have gaps, they can be called slivers, or I guess they're gaps. Slivers if you overlap as well. You make sure you don't want to ever be overlapping polygons. And that all has to do with the topology and how you're drawing stuff, but that's mainly if you're dealing with land cover or continuous coverage. When you're dealing with buildings, we typically don't have to deal with that. Save this. Save my information there. And there we have it. So that is digitizing data directly in our GIS. Are there any other questions before we move on? All right, the next item we had was geocoding. I want to see if I had a slide on that or not. I think I do. All right, so geocoding, one of the best geocoders out there, if you want to use it, is based on Google Maps API. Really good geocoder. It does have some limits. It used to be completely free, and now it's only a little bit free. But you do have to sign up for an account to use the Google API. And the Google API then also, when you sign up for the account, requires you to type in a credit card. And then they give you so many free credits or whatever it is that you can use. And you can also still get so many free geocoding lookups per month or per day. I can't remember what it is, but it works really well if you want to do that. But I don't teach doing that method right now because I don't like having students have to put in credit cards to get a free service. So I won't be showing you the geocoding Google API, but know it exists. If you're doing a robust, serious project that you need to do geocoding, use Google's API. Okay. There are some tools that are built into QGIS that will ask you, if you go try using them, they will let you enter your Google username, and it'll check that you have an API key, and they will let you tap into the Google API for geocoding and do stuff that way. It works pretty well, but again, I'm not going to go through that right now just because we don't have those API keys set up. If you do look at the installed plugins that are available, there are several other geocoders you can try out. Try running them. TomTom, so. This other geocoding one, I think this one, yeah, this uses Nominatim and Google Web Services. Okay. You can also get the address of a point by clicking on the map canvas. So that's the geocoding one. We'll take a look at that one real quick. Kind of make decisions what we think about it, and I'll show you another method. So I'm just keeping my same project going here today. Go up to my toolbar, get to my plugins, did a search for geocode. And here's this one. It's a free geocoder service provided by the OpenStreetMap project. And there's another one we can read about what this one does. This is the Peleus version. It has a API key with it. And there's this one. So let me start with this one just to show the interface to you. I'm going to install the geocoding plugin. Added it. I think I added it right here. So you can find an address. In this case, let me put in it came in and put a point for me at a specific address. Okay, here's the geocoding plug results. So if you only have like 5 or 6 addresses you want to type in, this works just fine. Get those points on a map. You can group those points together, and it would help you do some geocoding that way. And that's that one tool there. Another one, we'll go back and install. Here's I should back up. Under plugins, what this adds for you is the rest of the service. Here's settings, there's reverse geocoding. Reverse geocoding is pretty cool because you can click on any spot and it tells you that address that way. So if we went back into our aerial photo, maybe we can find out what this is. If I click on the school, so it's Patton Sheridan School on Adrian Street in Greene County. Okay, so there, gave you the name. So it's actually useful to use that reverse geocoding, and it put a point on there for me. All of the geocoding plugin results are in this temporary memory here, and it does have an attribute table. Everything that gets combined is one string, but it is there. So you could click on several points, like I said, and make your map this way. It's temporary memory. So before you quit, or in case QGIS crashes on you, you have to be careful. You can go down here and tell it to make this permanent. And if you make a temporary layer permanent, it'll ask you where you want to save the file. I'm not going to do that right now, but just know anytime you see that little computer chip that it's in virtual memory. So plugins, again, geocoding. There's some settings here, and here you can pick which one you want. If you go to Google, you do have to use the key. Geocoding here, again, just to find the address. Okay, so there's no batch processing with this, but it's really good for reverse geocoding. The other one, but 300 free, what was the question on 300 free, is Jesse, is that what the one is on Google right now? 300 free per day? So let me go back here. I'm going to turn on this other plugin. Let's see where it put it. Don't know for sure where it put that one. But either way, it works about the same as the other one. And what I'm really interested in is getting batch geocoding, where I can have multiple points put in at the same time, and then bring those points in just like I did when I brought in these sample coordinates. So if I have an external application that'll do geocoding for me, that works just fine. I'll get the latitude, longitudes, and then I'll pull them into the system. You can do that directly with the Google API too through an interface. So it looks like 300 requests, but I'm not sure if that's your daily limit or not. They really cracked down on that in the last 2 years because people were using that API and getting a couple thousand a day. In fact, I'd set up a script. I knew how many we needed, and I would have it run every day, whatever number it was. It would go geocoding for me the next day. I'd continue through my list. It was a database, so I could just keep saying, okay, do 1,000 a day, 1,000 tomorrow. And I built up my database, and I was, I don't know, 15,000 records or something, and I was good to go. But they've cracked down on that, unfortunately, probably because of people like me. Okay, $300 worth of credits. Yeah, that makes sense. $300 worth of credits, but the credits give you a lot of stuff. But you have to be careful because you could go over it, and it's a key. So someone have access and they tried to charge a lot of credits accidentally to your account or had key, then you're sitting there with a credit card bill. Which is the reason I'm not going to have students do that right now. Okay, so back here to our presentation on the geocoding. Another option that you have is to use the US Census as a geocoder, which is also pretty good. And on this one, I'll let you check this out on your own, but you can come in here, you can do a one-line geocoding, which you just give it one address. And so again, I'll do this where I lived in college. Again, the more information you can provide it, the better it is. You got a choice between which data set you want to use. I'll use the current one, hit find, leave, it puts it down here for us, and there's the coordinates of it right there. So you could copy and paste those in to a text file if you need to. It doesn't download for you, it just puts it on the screen. There's this address one, again, similar thing. And there's also an address batch. This didn't work yesterday, but it worked last week, so I'm not sure exactly what was happening. But they do have a sample file here you can look at. And I want to try and open this so you can see the sample for how they format theirs. This is the format they provided in their sample. It's weird, the top record, they don't actually label out, but city, state, zip. They just assume it's going to be address. This shouldn't be shaded like this. It just isn't in numbers, but they assume the first one is your address, then you have your city, state, and zip. Okay, so as long as you provide a CSV file that is city, state, address, city, state, zip, you can use this geocoder. And then you would just browse to it, choose which one of these you want. You're limited to 10,000 records. Okay, I can live with that. That's a batch file. Doesn't mean I can't do more than one. Just means that's all the bigger your file can be in that one request. Send it up there, and then you can get the results. And once you get the results, sometimes what it does is in the Excel file that it returns to you, it puts the latitude and longitude. I'll show you here. Okay, just like it did, web's not changing here for me. Just like it did on the one line address, it gave it to me as a lat long, but it puts it in one cell. So, yeah, well, it puts into one cell for you in your CSV that it returns to you. So you'll have to do just a little bit of data cleaning with it and tell it that you want that space between the latitude and longitude, or longitude, latitude, whichever format it's in. You're going to need to split that field based on that space and just put it into 2 columns instead of 1. So a lot of times what I do is I keep what is returned to me from the US Census as my coordinates. I think they call the column name is coordinates. I add 2 more fields, latitude, longitude, and I just split that field based on the space and put in. Some other geocoders will actually put a semicolon in between. You just end up, or some will actually give you 2 columns, latitude, longitude. That's the preferred method. But whatever it is, you guys are data scientists, you can go and split a field. It's not that big a deal. But that's a great way to go and do using this geocoder. Yeah, let me get the right address for you. Okay, it's also in the the page here to refer back to later. If you run into troubles with this later this week, let me know, but they do have some more information down here on how to use the PDF or an API service of this census. It's not going to be as up to date probably as Google Maps, surprisingly, even though it's a census, but it's going to be pretty darn good, and it's really good for free. Any questions on geocoding at this point? Okay. So the next part of the afternoon, we're going to do some geoprocessing. And so remember I asked you guys earlier on the data prep to go and draw for me the Midwest regions. This is what you drew when they all get lined up. Just, you know, that was a really great idea that I had to have you do this exercise until I realized I have to somehow get all the polygons that you guys drew together. And I used a Google form. And Google form is nice because it let you, I had 28 or 30 different submissions. Each one had this, you guys pasted in your GeoJSON of that, but then I had 30 GeoJSONs I had to combine. And that was not quite as easy as I was hoping it would be. You have to do a fair bit of manipulation to get the stuff. And I had it working, except I found out there's a couple people didn't fully follow the directions. And there's a couple of line outlines instead of polygons. And I ran out of time to get that completely cleaned. So I cheated, went through another method and threw it into GeoJSON. And it looks like this when it's overlaid because they're semi-transparent. And so when you don't have an extra hour to do a project, this is what you do. You use GeoJSON and layer things. And you can see that this is the area that most of you, a lot of people agreed on being the Midwest. I did take it a little step further, and I was able to bring stuff into QGIS, but because there's still one polygon in there that's got something funny going on with it, it wouldn't let me do any actual geoprocessing of it. What I had planned to do in geoprocessing is overlaid all those polygons together. And after they're overlaid together, you can use a process to dissect them or union them. And that means, if you can see on my screen here, like there's a polygon that goes way out here and another one that goes right here. This area that has 2 polygons over it would have been created into 2 subpolygons. So it gets all diced up into as many different areas as it can based upon how many places we're overlapping. And then you can go back and you can count how many overlaps you have, and then that polygon can take on a count value. So I would know that, hey, in this region I'm kind of outlining right here, 2 people considered that to be the Midwest, 1 person up here, 1 person here. This looks like it was 2 people here. This little sliver right here is probably 3 people, and on and on and on, okay? So that's what that tool would have done. Just the geoprocessing does require your data to be in the same format and working the way you want. I was impressed by the fact that people did not at all consider West Virginia to be in the Midwest. There was pretty much no doubt that this line followed Ohio and down the border, okay? And then after that, we got all over the place, but really cool. Since I was able to bring the data into QGIS and not to geoprocessing, my second option there was I just went to the symbology and I turned off the borders of the file and I set my transparency or my fill. I just told them I set the fill color to set the transparency to like 10% and it let it stack up. And that's how I got a map that looks like this, which was, I was able to do that right away. That took like 90 seconds. That was my first attempt before I actually did that once before I tried to do the geoprocessing because I just couldn't wait to see what people had to say. And so I did that. So I knew what I was going to be expecting coming forward. I just didn't expect there to be a flaw in the data, but kind of cool. So what we're going to do though, is we're going to do some of our own geoprocessing and we're going to start out by making buffers. This is what happens when you buffer every county in Iowa. You get a funny looking map like this. It's pretty cool. And then if you do things called clipping, you can take a couple of those shapes and you can clip a spot out. We're gonna do that too. Okay, and then we'll go into layouts. So next step here is let's take just a, why don't we take a 5-minute break? How's that sound? Let's take a 5-minute break and then come back everybody with your QGIS up and running. And all you need is to have the state layers turned on. If you have the additional points and stuff still there, you're fine. We'll probably use them. But just get for me the state layers and turn those all on. So let's say 140. We'll come back at 140 and continue on. All right, let me go ahead and get started here again. I think we got about 40 minutes worth of stuff left, maybe even less than that. So we'll be done by 2:30, either way. And so we're gonna take a look at here. Everybody, I guess make sure I'm back online. Tom's on my back online, can you hear me? I think I am. Great, okay, thanks, Grant. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little bit of the processing. If you got QGIS open, which I hope you do, and if you don't have the processing plugin turned on yet, or you weren't here on last Thursday, one step we need to go do is if you go up to plugins, everybody can check this to make sure you have it turned on, because if you have a new client, you might need to turn this on. Manage and install plugins. I'm gonna type in the word process. And here's processing right here. Install it if you don't have it turned on. This is a core piece that should be on all the time for you anyway. So you can pick that. Yeah, I will mention, I just have this one on top of this. If any of you are PostGIS users or PostSQL, this works well with Postgres. And so you can store it, instead of storing files as shape files, if you know Postgres and SQL, you can connect to a server database really easy. Even if it's on your own local computer and you've installed Postgres in your local computer, you can do a lot of things with PostGIS and Postgres directly from the GIS software. So just be aware of that if you want to be a power user on those two things. Okay, so I have my processing turned on. And then to get the processing toolbox to show up, you should have a processing menu. Come down to where it says toolbox and go ahead and open this up. So everything that's some type of a geoprocess or other scripting tool ends up over in the processing toolbox. Some of these items are also, that are frequently used, end up in a menu item. For example, in vector, we have geoprocessing tools, geometry tools, research tools, analysis tools, and data management tools. While it seems like there's a lot here, that's only a subset of what's over here. Okay, but one of the ones that is over here is vector geoprocessing tools buffer. And it is also if you just type in buffer, it tells you that vector geometry has buffer in it. It's a recently used item for me as well, but it's right here. Okay. What I want to have you do is, instead of buffering all, again, I said this part's unscripted. We're just going to kind of play around here. So if you have questions, I do need to have you ask them or post them up into the chat, and I will try and demonstrate whatever you're asking me to show. Otherwise, I'll kind of just work through some of these geoprocessing tools. But we're gonna use buffer. Instead of buffering the entire state first, let's just buffer a couple of counties. And so use your direct selection tool, which is this white arrow with the yellow box in the background. And I'm going to select with a shift key down a couple of counties. Now mine aren't filling in, they're just highlighted in yellow because I had this set as a line instead of a fill. For the purpose of what we're doing now, I probably should change this back. Do a simple fill, but not blue. It's too hard on my eyes. Not that that's any better, having that yellow selection like that, but anyway, you can see I picked 3 counties in bright yellow. And that's gonna probably annoy me. There we go. That'll annoy me just a little bit less for the moment. Maybe not. So now it looks like John Deere colors. We pick our 3 counties. And we're going to come over here to our buffer, double click our buffer. And in your buffer, it'll always look like this when you have the items selected or not selected. The interface remains the same. There is a checkbox here where you can tell it if you want selected features only. So make sure you go and select that for selected features only. I'm going to buffer the counties I selected by a distance in miles. And I'm going to go up to, I'm going to say 6 miles around these. We don't need to worry about segments right now. You don't need to worry about the cap style, the join style, the miter limit. The one we're going to come back to in just a moment is this one called dissolve result. I want you to make sure this first time we do this, that this is not checked. And that's the default, but make sure that it is not checked. Hit run, and what you're going to see on your page is it creates a buffer around each individual county for us. And it adds a new layer called buffered, stored in memory. Okay. I still have my buffer dialog open, and I think this is pretty cool that we can do this. It gave me the log of what it did, but I can go back and click my parameters tab on the top. And this time, I'm going to tell it to dissolve the result. So when I dissolve the result, instead of getting 3 individual buffers, I'm going to get 1. So I hit 1. Now I hit click this time. It made a new, same buffers as before, but it combined them together. And so if I look at these 2 layers, this orange one is the first one. If I look at its attributes, these are the 3 attributes. In fact, it carried the attributes, it carried the county name for me, it carried the attributes for the area of water and land and all that forward. It brought those things out for me so that I could still see them as individual polygons, but the polygons changed because they're those individual buffers. Whereas if I turn that one off and I go to this new buffered one right here and I look at its attributes, it's just 1. And to be honest with you, this information in here is useless because it just picked the first record and kept it. The rest is garbage. So, I mean, the entire thing is garbage. The only thing that's actually accurate is the state FIPS code is still 19. So you could go and delete these fields by turning the editor on. Go to each one of these, or sorry, here's the delete field. Pulls up a dialog for you. Pull it over for you. So let me go through that step again. This is the buffered when I did this, I went to this icon for delete field, pulls up this icon here, and you can check the fields you want to delete. Hit OK. Boom, those fields are gone. Save it. Again, this is still in memory, so it doesn't really matter. And close it. And now if I were to click my info tool on it, it just has, this is the one, the county underneath I clicked, but this is the feature I just had right now. Does that make sense to everybody? So when you buffer something, you have to decide if you want to dissolve it after it buffers, or if they should remain as unique buffers around each entity that you created. Any questions on this at this point? I told you that green would drive me nuts before too long. All right, so now let's say you did make your buffer. And it does tell me over here I can still edit the buffering page. I should go turn that off. A little icon, there's a little pencil over the square, so I fixed that. Okay, but now we're back here where we made these buffers. So let me deselect. Okay. Here's these 3 individual counties as separate buffers. There is a tool called Dissolve that I can go back and dissolve it after I have made these individual ones. So if you go over to the processing and you type in dissolve, it's also in vector geometry, or if you just knew where it was, you could expand vector geometry and grab it from there. I should mention in this toolbox, you can make your own toolbox options if you want, and store your most recent or your files in your own toolbox and stuff like that too. But or use the ones you want, put in your own toolbox. You can do that in ArcGIS as well. But just getting to know where they're at is the key thing, or what the different options are is the way you start doing geoprocessing. But anyway, let's go back to dissolve. That's what I said I wanted to do. Here's the dissolve tool. Double click it. The layer is this buffered. Now you gotta be careful because I have 2 buffered. Well, which one is it? When you do make new items from a geoprocessing, it just spits out a generic name. It's probably good to come over and make one and rename it. So let me see if I can, oops. Call it buffer 3. Since I have 3 polygons. Now, if I come over and do my dissolve, I can make sure buffered 3 is the in fact layer I'm dissolving. Dissolve fields. We'll come back and talk about that in just a little bit. Let's go and leave that like the way it is. We'll hit run, close, and it makes a new buffer for me. It is just the single one. So this is the same as the one it made earlier that looked like this is everything. It should be the same as the dissolved one. Okay, so 2 different ways to do it, just one took an extra step. So I mentioned steps. A lot of times in geoprocessing, there are multiple steps to producing your final output. And while we won't get into it today, I will mention there's something called a model builder, and you can create a new model. And this new model might have multiple steps where you might do stuff. You might go and do a buffer, change the projection of a file. All these things that come into here are steps, and it's like a flow chart, and it does all those things in the order that you want them to do. ArcGIS has a really good model builder as well. I'm most familiar with that one, but this one has one built in. It also has scripting up here that you can do. You can create a new script, and if you're, have you done this type of scripting before, you can do Python scripting here and make your own tools, or call tools and make your own script that runs various tools together. Again, so just note this is very powerful options for geoprocessing, but for getting started, the key is just to find out what are some of the existing basic tools that are available. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's do a buffer again. I'm going to deselect my selected layers. I did that with the deselect tool. I'm going to get rid of these buffered and dissolved layers by selecting them and right clicking and removing them. Okay, this time I'm going to buffer the entire state of Iowa. So come back to my buffer. And it's going to buffer all the counties for me this time because nothing's selected, doesn't even give me the option. And note that, okay, so when I came over here and did this, because I selected Iowa County over here on my layers menu, when I went to buffer, by default, it put that one in the input layer for me, but I still have the ability to switch. I mean, I could switch to the runways or any of these other points if I want to. We're going to do Iowa counties. And we're going to buffer these things 10 miles. Do not dissolve. Let's hit run. You get a map similar to what I showed you in that screen earlier. And now that we've done this, let's go ahead and let's find, we're going to try and find some areas that are not overlapped maybe quite as much. So we're going to go do an intersect. And so I want to pick, I'm just going to pick a couple counties in here, or a couple of these buffers. I just picked those like that. So I have these areas, and what I want to do is I want to go and I'm going to try a, let's first do this. I selected those. Let's just do a join on, or a dissolve on just those that are selected. So go over here to dissolve. Select the features only. And we'll use our field called buffered. Let's hit run. I'll turn my buffered off. And there's the shape I got. So if I was saying all the areas that are within 10 miles of the counties of interest, these are all the areas, and I'm left with these two little holes. Those two little holes are not within the counties that I selected the buffers of. Why I'd want this, I don't know, but that's how dissolving works, all right? Let's try something else. Let's go back to our buffered areas here. And this time, instead of, well, actually, I'll turn that off. We're gonna go back to our Iowa counties. And what we're gonna do in this time is I want just an outline of the state. And I can make that out of this map by using dissolve. Dissolve this. There's no fields to select. Let's hit run. Close. And now I just have an outline for Iowa. And I will go and name this one. And just call it Iowa outline. Do make one of those because we're gonna do something with it in a moment. So again, I just dissolved all of Iowa County. Made new called it Iowa outline. Okay, so some other commands we can do include clipping. And so what I want to do in this case is this area in northwest Iowa. And so what we can do is here we have our buffered is our green layer. I do need to unselect these, but this is our buffered area. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to select this shape that's in the northwest part of the state. This is my buffer that was around Lyon County. I'm going to do a search for something called clip. Double click clip. My input layer, and there's an overlay layer. Okay. And a lot of times you'll have, as you're learning how to do this, you end up having to trial and error and you have to switch them around. They do have a little help menu over here that tells us the eclipse a vector layer using the features of an additional polygon layer. So my overlay layer in this case is the buffered, and it's the selected features of my buffered layer. And I want to clip my Iowa outline. So it's going to clip this layer using this. What should happen when this is done is I should end up with a shape that looks just like Lyon County, because it, with the exception of the buffer that's outside of Iowa will go away, but the buffer that's inside Iowa will remain. See if that works. We'll hit run. Close it. And deselect so we can see what we got here. And there it is. Okay, so that's Lyon County, but it's got a curved edge down here because the buffer made that. And if I want to look at this in comparison, see the difference? Okay, so that's a clipping. That's the clip feature. The clip feature is in vector overlay. I just came and typed in clip in the toolbox, and that's how I was able to find it, because I don't always remember where these are at. And sometimes I've moved them from where they are. So that's where clip's at if you want to try that. So go ahead, everybody, go ahead and try doing some buffering, clipping, and dissolving real quick, and then we'll come back and try something else. So I'll give you a minute. I'll give you 2 minutes here to play around with some clipping and buffering. Do you need to buffer before you clip? No, you don't need to buffer before you clip. You can clip pretty much anything you want. You do have to have a shape. You have to have 2 different shapes to clip. So my buffer was just my second polygon. So you have to have 2 polygons to do it, if that helps. So for example, I made that school polygon, which is really tiny. It's right there. Let me zoom into it. Okay, I could use that and clip the state of Iowa map behind it and produce something. But the main thing is you just have to have 2 different polygons. And the easy one for me to use right now was this buffer. In fact, we can do one here. I can show you another example. Let's go up to these 2 sample coordinates. I had 2 points I started out earlier today with. Knew I kept them around for a reason. I'm going to buffer those 2. So I'm buffer 2 points. So I'm buffering my sample coordinates. I'm going to give them a nice, they're in degrees, which is weird. Oh, because of the way they came in. This is what I told you again about why you should save stuff in the same projection. Case in point, let me just fix this. I'm going to right click, export, save those features as. Put them into a projected coordinate system that can have units, points. Okay, so same points. Now I can buff them. So I put stuff in miles. Just guessing the distance. 10 miles should be good. You know, we're gonna go 15. 15 miles around each of those 2 points. We'll dissolve the result. Run it. Okay, cool. So here is my buffer that's made around those 2 points, dissolved. What I want to do now is it's a cookie cutter. I'm going to clip, and a clip is a cookie cutter. I do want to name this so I get the right one. So these are my buffered points. We'll do a clip. So I want my input layer to be the state of Iowa. Needs to be the Iowa counties. My overlay layer, which is my cookie cutter, needs to be my buffered points. And I'm going to run it. Close this. Let me turn everything off so you can see what was left. And there's what's left. Okay, so I just took a cookie cutter into the state of Iowa. I have several polygons here, though. If I look at the clip output, there's polygons. Again, they're correct. The county names are correct. The areas are wrong, but the county names are correct. And there are ways you can come back here. If you just had a total area of the county, you could recalculate the area based upon the polygon size that's there. And there's some tools that will do that for you. In fact, I think Field Calculator's got it built into it to do that. Or it's built into the Field Calculator to go and do that. Okay, but there's my different clipping of it. Okay, let's do a couple more of the basic. Really, and for up here, the geoprocessing tools, intersections, another one we can do, union. Let's open the box for union. Union checks for overlaps between features and then creates separate features for overlapping and non-overlapping parts. So if you had done that, gone back to, here I have this one. I just say I picked, oops, got to be in the right layer when you pick them. Well, I should mention this. Okay, watch how I do a selection here. When I click and drag from the top left to the bottom right, okay, it'll select things. If I do the same thing backwards, the selection can be slightly different. It didn't work the way I thought it was going to. Just note when you select stuff, sometimes you can change the direction and it changes. Here, I think if it touches the polygon, it gets it. Does it work both ways? Well, in ArcGIS, you do have to do it one way or the other. Okay, either way, we're going to select this stuff in Northwest Iowa, and we're going to run the union tool on these. And so I'm union, input layer, overlay layer. Let's see what happens. They're the same. It might give me an error on this. Nope, it did. Close this, and if I look at my new red areas, this gets hard to see because everything's underneath itself. But it basically did a clip and pulled all of those out. And look at the attributes. There's way more attributes here than there are counties selected. I mean, there's 41 of them. You'll notice there's a Chickasaw, Chickasaw, Chickasaw. Well, it's because there's a Chickasaw county that was overlapped by another county. And it stacks them all up here, so it's really hard to see. If I take the input there, can you see, just when I click that one spot, there's all of these overlaps that are in here. And this is kind of what I was doing with the Midwest territory, or the Midwest map that you guys drew. Once I have this drawn, these are each individual units. You could then look for intersects, things like that. Back to type the intersect tool. We'll intersect our union. And found all the polygons that intersected each other and made them into separate polygons. Okay. This gets really confusing because you can't see through these polygons. You have to go in the table and dissect them apart. I do recommend anytime you're doing the geoprocessing, when you make a model or do anything multi-step, work out each individual step first and then chain them together to do what you want them to do. If you try to do a whole process of several things, you'll run into problems somewhere along the line and not know what caused it. Okay, so that's basic introduction to geoprocessing. Again, as you saw, there's a lot more in here we can do. One of these ones we can do, oh, I should show you this. We had our Iowa counties. What if I wanted to convert these counties into points? There is a tool called Centroid, and it lives in vector creation. So I'll show you the vector creation. Again, a whole bunch of things in here, but we could create, just create points, a point layer from a table, generate points along a line, import geotagged photos. Oh, I should mention that one. If you have a folder of photos that you've taken and it included the geotag information in the JPEG, you can tell it to import, and it will go and it will bring in the lat long of each of those photos and put on your map for you. So import geotag photos is a really cool tool to use. Okay, but I was going to do centroids. So type in centroid. Okay, generate points, pixel centroids inside of a polygon. Double click this. We're going to use, I don't have it selected. Let's go back and change to here. Oh, sorry, back up. I'm telling you the wrong tool. Here, sorry, here, in the wrong one. Centroids in Iowa County. Centroid for each part. So what this means, like the state of Hawaii, obviously a state of Hawaii is not one contiguous polygon, it's multiple polygons. And if I was doing this point for each state, do I want a point to show up on each polygon or each island? Or do I want all those islands are part of, it's called a multi-polygon. Those multiple polygons are really one record entity. It will instead put one point to represent Hawaii, as opposed to several points for the islands. So that's all it's telling you. The default is one per part or per entity. You can change it to be per part. We don't have that problem in Iowa, so we'll leave this alone. Hit run, and there we go. Now we have a point map of Iowa, where each dot is the center of a county. And if I do this right, let's see. So you could take these points, now that it's its own layer, you could go and you could buffer each of those if you want to. Go back and actually make this be an outline. Okay, so there's an outline map of Iowa with all these different grid of points. Okay, questions? Okay. All right, any other questions right now about buffering? If not, we're gonna move over to map layout. We have about 19 minutes left here. So for map layout, and I actually need to refresh my page here. A couple things I want to talk about is, before I do map layout, is something called Color Brewer, and I'm going to start with Mapbox first. I mentioned earlier this morning, it has different styles and stuff you can make. If you go to Mapbox and you look at its page, here's some different styles. This is still OpenStreetMap data, but you can see how they styled the look of the map. And you can create your own and host it. And you could, people could get a fee on it. It could be free. But this is just different ways of styling data to create neat looking maps. Some people share these for free, like I said, some people sell their style. One of the other fun ones is the amazing Spider-Man map, which I just think really shows what you can do with Mapbox's style editor. So here is New York City, all styled for us using Spider-Man colors, which I think is pretty cool. They got a font in there that represents more of a comic book font. And you can see where this map could be used in a variety of different games or what have you. So, pretty cool. Where Mapbox makes its money is when you make an account, you can host 2 free maps. and they have so much bandwidth or so many loads per month or per day. Once you go above the number of times people are loading in that map, they start to charge you a small fee per page load. But it's pretty generous, especially if you're just doing a small project for a client, like we're doing in DSPG. There's usually no problem. We're not going to be hitting 100,000. I mean, they're looking for the big time users, not people just learning how to use the software. So that's Mapbox. Now, with those two, you saw that there was a lot of use of color in the maps, some good, some bad. And when it comes time for us to be presenting maps or preparing maps, we do want to take into account what the colors are and what they mean, and can people understand and read the map. And so Color Brewer is this other website, which is a really handy tool that lets us look at thematic maps and recommendations for colors that you can use. And so they have different schemes. I'll give you an example here. So this is Color Brewer. Drop it in here. It's going to start out with the default one, but you can change it when you get in there. There's sequential covers, there's diverging color patterns, and there's qualitative color patterns. And Cynthia Brewer is well known for color combinations and color theory and cartography. And so this is just a tool that she's put together. We can come back and tell sequential. You know, you can look at, you want it to be colorblind safe. You can check this. These colors are colorblind safe. Printer friendly, photocopy safe, how you want to do the roads and see that information. We have number of data classes. There's 3. There's 7 data classes you can preview. I'll look with 9 data classes. Okay, so nice representation of what you can do here. Here's the colors that were used with their hex codes. So this is not only valuable for work that you're doing in, let's say, QGIS. It's valuable for almost anything you're laying out in web design that's got a map. You can just copy the hex codes. You can look at this as RGB or CMYK as well. And you can export out this color palette too. Several software programs have made plugins that will link to Color Brewer, so you can use this built or some of this information inside of your code. I haven't looked for one to see if there's an R package for Color Brewer, but if somebody wants to check that out, go ahead, do that. Okay, so that was Color Brewer. Next thing I said we talked about is we're going to do a super basic layout in QGIS right now, just to show you that it exists. All right, so let's say I've made this map, this wonderful point map, and I wanted to export this out. I have a couple options. One, I could go make an actual map layout, which we'll do in a second. Or 2, I could just export this out as an image. Exporting out as an image is really easy. QGIS, project menu, import, export, and you have the choice to export map to image. And you can tell if you want the full screen, it's just a part of the screen, extent of the canvas, what resolution you have, and additional items here. You could export that out. You copy to the clipboard, which is also really nice. Append a georeference file. That's that JGW file. So that if someone else has this image, they could bring this image in just like we brought in the raster images earlier today. If you are sharing data and you want, and someone says, "Hey, can you share that map with me?" And you're like, "Oh man, I'd like to share it with you, but I don't want to give you my data." You could share them an image of your work, and what you do is export it out and save it with this geographic information, either embedded or as a world file. Do it as a world file and export out your image. Go open it up in Photoshop if you want. Put a watermark on it or not. You don't have to. Either way, it's just a screenshot. But the screenshot, since it has a JGW file, they could go load it up into their QGIS or ArcGIS software, and they would see it as a graphic overlay or underlay to the work they're doing. But they don't have access to the actual record data. Okay, so it's very important. Nice way to share data without sharing the data. And hopefully you can appease the person who's bugging you and requesting something you may or may not want to completely share. So it's just a nice little trick. You can export to a PDF file. When you export to a PDF file, there's an option for creating a geospatial PDF. I'm not going to go into that. Just know that it's in here. It does make the ability to like measure things inside of a PDF file, possibly get attributes of some features in the PDF file that you export. But just know that there is a save map as a PDF. And then what we're talking about next was going and doing the map layouts. And so for map layout, there's two icons on the top here, dealing with map layouts. One makes a new print layout. I'll click that. You have to give it a name. Some letters there. And it opens a whole new dialog right here. And so when you have this new map layout window available, you have several tools on the left that allow you to add your map, a title, legend to this layout. This is your paper layout. So maybe at first we want to just bring over, you can bring in images. This brings a new 3D view if you have a 3D map. Okay. This one will bring in, move your items, edit nodes. Okay. Bring north arrows in. Probably most useful sometimes is to bring in a map. Okay. This one adds a new layout to your screen. Panning, the question is, are you panning your map or are you panning your page? There's no scene set, and I'll tell you that there's nothing there. When you bring stuff out, you just simply drag it, draw it, and then you can delete it. Here's a picture layout. Looking at something here, I wonder what's going on. So there's my legend. There we go. Sure what I was doing. The icon on some of these isn't this little shape like this. There's actually a map in it. So I'm in version 3.10. How that icon got changed or not, but one of them has an actual picture of a map in it. But this is for drawing the map on here. Here's my legend. Now, of course, the legend shows a lot of layers that are not turned on right now. You can click either one of these items, and it'll take you to the properties. So for example, in these properties here, I can come through and auto update it. So it will only show me what layers are on or off. I can also override it. Let me see if I can get this up here enough. There you go. Only show items inside the link map. There we go. So now I'm only seeing the centroids and the outline for the state. You could set the scale of this. Now, if you were to go think, oh, I'm gonna go use this icon here, these icons right here are gonna set the size of this paper. It's gonna zoom in on that instead. Here I can zoom in, but it's only zooming in. It's not zooming in within this page here. If I come back here, maybe, and I do a zoom. Oops. Come back here. If you refresh it, you can refresh this so that now it, that it will go and refresh the screen. So let me move this over. Come on, it's not clicking the way I want to click. Still stuck on my tool here. There it came out. Okay. Maybe move this map over here. Again, you can right click, get properties, item properties will give you the properties of your map. You can lock things in place. If you have multiple maps, you can name them and put multiple maps in the same layout. Here's my scale. If I change this number just a little bit, that might be too small of a number. Let's see if we go to there. It scaled it slightly for me. You can set what projection system it should be using. See how the top of the state's kind of curved? No, it's not. I think that's really cool. I don't think you can do that in ArcGIS Desktop. Maybe in Pro, but I think it's kind of cool that you can change that here. So let's say we go to that scale. That's really big, or zoomed in. Extra 0, add one more 0. Okay, get the idea. If we want to add a title, here's our text tool. Put some generic text in there. You think you want to type your text in here for the title, but you end up having to come over to here and type your title in. And then you can render as HTML if you want to include HTML in here, or you can come down to the font and you can say, okay, here's where I can set the size of my text. Of course, the north arrow. So when you go about making a layout, now my beautiful layout here, but a couple things you want to keep in mind is you want to always make sure there's a phrase called tall dogs. See if I can remember all these things. T is your title. A is you want an annotation or an author. L, I gotta think about what L is. Possibly location arrow. And I'm forgetting them right now. It's late in the day. Tall dogs. I'll get it posted on the webpage for you to see. It's just a nice little checklist of things you should have. The S is the scale. The G is a grid. A lot of times we don't have a grid, but you've seen maps that have a grid on them. Orientation, grid, and scale. Oh, and legend. That's the L. L is legend. So little acronym, if you have it, you can memorize it. Go through and you look at a map, make sure you've included those things. Or if you did not include it, why didn't you include it? Okay. Date, D can be date as well that you created it. When you put dates in a map, you should make sure it's the date that was created and printed, the author, but also what is the date of the data is useful. I mean, if I make a map of census population for counties in Iowa, but I say, hey, I created this on June 20 or June 30th, 2020, that's great. But did I tell anybody that the census or the data I'm showing is the population from 1980? No, I didn't. You make sure you include that information on your map. All right, so that's map layout. The other one I told you that was up here for an icon, I'm gonna close this, is if you have multiple layouts in your layout manager, you can access multiple layouts. You can make a template that you use over and over and over for your map layout. A lot of things you can do. Again, we could truly spend the entire afternoon messing around with the fine details of map layout. We're not going to do that. Any quick question on that? I got one last item for us to look at. All right, this is fun. So leaflet is, you guys should have been exposed to leaflet yesterday, but yesterday's lecture was postponed. And so I added a slide in here to talk about leaflet real quick. Leaflet is a JavaScript library for coding, making web maps. I do teach a web mapping course each spring. I did not teach this last spring, but typically each year I teach a web mapping course. It's taught online. So if, give a little pitch for myself. If anybody wants to take Introduction to Web Mapping, it's LA 558. It's offered next year in January, and it has always been taught online. It's not one of those courses that was converted from face-to-face to online. It's been online the last 5 or 6 years. And I take you through how to develop using Leaflet. And we can make maps kind of like they show on here, but it's JavaScript based, where you have pop-ups that open up. got markers on the screen. You can look at their tutorials here. Here's a chloropleth map. You can hover over a state and you get information about that state. Okay, you can do a lot of the same stuff in Shiny as well. In fact, Shiny or R has that leaflet package, as well as a Plotly package. It does something similar. And you can make interactives like this to fit it in too. But I will tell you that even if you use Shiny to produce something that's got a leaflet map in it, it's still using the same basic leaflet JavaScript coding. And so if you ever want to tweak your Shiny output and customize it even further, it's really handy to know something about the JavaScript that's driving that map. So you can go in and manually edit it, because the leaflet generator, just like we're going to see in QGIS right now, it can only do so much. It's got some limitations as to how far it can go. And if you want to really ramp it up, you've got to get into code. But this is leaflet. And the leaflet backgrounds that you see are the default, typically OpenStreetMap. You have options that you can change. This is called leaflet providers. But you can change the background that you want. And some really cool ones that are in here. The one that I commonly use when I want to have a black and white background, let me see if I can find it here. There are these Stamen toner maps. I like to make beautiful black and white maps. If I'm doing thematic mapping, but I just want labels in the background, I'll use this. Gives me the code. I haven't tried it yet. Some of this code that's right here is an XYZ code. I think there might be a way to get these tiles and use them in other programs too. But you can pull these into your leaflet maps. The other thing, I'll give you this, I'll put this URL here. Yeah, I saw the Plotly note. Yeah, Plotly's pretty cool. I think it's kind of like, Plotly's kind of like, it's got competitors. You like Pepsi or you like Coke. And Plotly's that type of a program in our world. Gave you that URL. Let me jump back to that. Those of you who know Kelsey, Kelsey was our project manager for DSPG at Iowa State. She did take 558 this spring when my colleague taught it while I was on sabbatical. And this is her project she did for her final. And so she came in pretty new to GIS and new to all of this. And she made a pretty nifty program here, looking at substance use and recovery providers. And you can mouse over the different counties. It's a thematic map, which is beautiful, good colors, and get a pop-up that gives you some basic statistics, nice legend placement, and paragraph or narrative that goes with each of these. More about the providers here. This is cool because if you zoom in, these cluster maps start to break out. Here's location. If you want female only, these filters control the map over here. She pretty much took everything we taught her in class and built into this program, which is so cool that it made this nice interface, quite informative with what you could do here. So that is this leaflet tool running in the background with HTML. And you'll notice, I mentioned this earlier, she's hosting it on her free GitHub account, which is even better yet. All right, so we can do some leaflet inside of QGIS. And I do have a task sheet that walks you through some of this. I'm going to leave you with this today and show you one demo, but here's the URL if you want to get it and download it. Talks about going through and creating a basic leaflet output. Again, it's a draft version of this, but go ahead and take a look at it. Show you how to do this in QGIS real quick. So let's say I have a map. I think I need to go open up a project. I have one saved. And I'm not going to save this. leaflet demo.qgz is the file I'm opening. And so what I have created here is just a basic thematic map. And I think this one has to do with percent of households that have a broadband internet, I think is the data that was in this one. And it doesn't really matter for what we're doing right now. But here's the attribute table. One thing I mentioned earlier is you can delete fields. And let's say in this case that I did not need to have all these fields, and you'll see why in a moment we don't want to have all these fields. I would recommend coming back and deleting fields that you don't need. When you make a map like this directly, you're going to export out to leaflet. Do that with your copy. Don't do that with your original. Always do that with your copy of a data layer, because once you delete those fields, they're gone for good. Okay, so this particular data layer, let me look at its properties. It was joined to a table, and then the symbology is here based upon the HBroadband field. So going and exporting this out is, and I'm going to scroll minutes over what I wanted here, but I'll show you real quick. You got to turn on a plugin. The plugin you need to turn on is called Q to Web, something like that. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, it's not showing up. QGIS2 to web, there it is. So you're looking for QGIS2 web is the name of the plugin. So if you need to search for that, you can. And it will add to your screen an icon that's right here. That lets me create a web map. So if I click that, dialogues here, I can tell if I want an open layers map or a leaflet map. It gives me a Python error, which I don't know why it matters the first time. Just a couple times it does, but it doesn't matter the first time. Here's my layers. I can tell if I want to show these layers. This is why you might want to delete certain fields before you do this, because it's going to show all these fields. But I'm going to make this be an inline, my header label. This one be an inline label so you can see the difference. I want it to be visible. I want pop-ups. Do I want abstract? There's all these options in here you can play around with. Do I want a widget for the background color? Max zoom levels. Do I restrict to the extent? Where I want to export this out. Some additional settings that you can put in here. And there's a help to help you work through this. The most important thing in here is you have to come in and tell it to export to a folder. And it likes to bury it deep if you don't tell it this. So I will just make a temporary folder here. Open it. So it's going to go to that folder. I'm told that I want leaflet as the version. Hit export. Boom, it's done. And if I go look at my directory, this is the directory that created. Oh, I should mention, okay, before I go looking at that, you can preview what it's creating for you. If you have too many files in here and it takes a long time to make the preview, then you've probably overloaded it and you need to back off on how much data you're trying to push out. I could have had points on the map and thematic map here. But anyways, I exported that out and it creates a folder like this with some long name on it, date and time stamp. I go into it and here is the HTML and the CSS that's required. The data's here, so there's a JSON file. This JSON file is actually a GeoJSON file of the counties. Legend information's in here, okay? And the indexed HTML. And if I open this up now, we'll open this with Firefox. Here's that same page now in my web browser. And you can see that I basically have an interactive map that I could post onto GitHub or another web server, and I would have information directly from QGIS. that quick and easy. Again, as I mentioned, learning more about Leaflet and how it works allows you to come in and customize this even better, getting your zoom control the way you want. But the code is in here. I can right click, I can view the page source. And as you start to work with Leaflet, real quickly you'll find out what these things mean, different locations, panes, how it's doing stuff. And that's it, that's the code. It does refer to some other things, but for the most part, this is what's driving it. So that's a Leaflet plugin for QGIS, kind of fun to play with if you want to try that later. So with that, that's it. A few minutes long, but if there's any questions, let me know, post them here. Otherwise, take the rest of the day, play around with QGIS if you want. I am going to set up some office time on Thursday. Excuse me. I will post those for everybody next week as to when we're going to do that. It'll be Thomas or I will be there. I think the best thing to do is have like a Zoom session line set up for you. But I will, I think I'm looking at 3 to 4 on Thursday is our time that's set. The same time that's set for the R workshop, I will have Q be available for any QGIS questions that you may have. I don't expect so much this week, but in the next week or two, if you need help processing some files to help get them into R, there are GIS files, I can help prepare you for that. If you have questions dealing with mapping in R, I'm going to refer you to Aaron because he knows R mapping better than I do. But I will mention there is an R module that you can add to QGIS, but until you've played around a bit with QGIS, I won't worry about adding that R module yet. Okay? So that's all I got. Everybody have a good evening. I'll stay around here for a few minutes if you have questions. Otherwise, talk to you later.